The story begins when peace finally returns to the world after a young man defeats the Demon King. But even with the victory won, he stands alone among a field of graves, haunted by one regret: he should have been faster. Rewind back to the kingdom of Alderia, where crowds packed the royal capital for the hero's big send-off ceremony. Everyone's buzzing about the old prophecy, convinced the hero showed up exactly like it said he would, ready to take down the growing threat. All their hope is riding on one chosen kid, Albus Stride. Inside the palace, the king's excitement turns to shock when an official tells him Albus already left without even showing up to his own ceremony. Meanwhile, over at the northern castle gate, a girl is standing there trying to work up the nerve to walk past the guards. She keeps hesitating so much that she panics and starts apologizing, and one confused guard asks if she thinks there's some invisible wall stopping her. She introduces herself as Fiona Umel, just a humble cleric from up north. The guard tells her to hurry to the castle, since the hero's inside right now picking his party from a crowd of hopefuls. Fiona instantly spirals, convinced someone as useless as her would never get picked. The guard tells her there's no harm in trying, but before she can respond, a horse-drawn carriage comes rolling up behind them. Before Fiona can finish beating herself up, the driver reaches out and yanks her straight into the cargo bed. The guards freak out, watching what looks like a kidnapping happen right in front of them, and yell for the driver to stop. The driver glances back, calm as anything, and flashes the hero's insignia, leaving the guards and the kidnapped Fiona both speechless. Shock replaces panic as the guards realize the man driving is none other than the chosen hero himself, Albus Stride. Ignoring the chaos behind him, Albus turns to his new captive and says hell gets straight to the point. He calls her by name and asks Fiona Umel to join his party just like that. Back at the palace, the king's left speechless after learning Albus skipped his own ceremony because he thought it was a waste of time. As the carriage rolls on, Albus tells the shaking girl to knock it off and act normal. She accuses him of being a fraud and a con man, out to trick country girls like her into joining his party. To prove he's the real deal, he tosses her the hero's insignia, telling her the archbishop gave it to him when he was just 6. She's shocked he'd toss around something so valuable, but he brushes it off, saying he's got no time for pointless arguments. As they get close to Black Scale Peak, she realizes with horror they're heading straight for the mountain where the S-rank Blackwing dragon lives. She says any sane traveler takes a long detour around that mountain to avoid the strongest monster in the region. He laughs it off as a shortcut and explains he skipped the armor because he spent his whole budget on a fast horse and wagon, since speed's his top priority. Still frustrated by his logic and how she got recruited in the first place, she gets a question back: does she just not like people like him? Still confused about why she was chosen, and wondering if they've even met before, she listens as he starts telling her about his past. The story rewinds 10 years, back when Albus was just a 5-year-old kid in a quiet village. He recalls some shady stranger claiming to be God's messenger who convinced the whole village that Albus was destined to take down the Demon King. That kicked off his life as the chosen hero, spending every day grinding through brutal training in both swordplay and magic. After 10 years on the road with a loyal party fighting through countless monsters, he finally reached the end of his long journey. But it all ended in failure. He and his allies got completely wiped out by the Demon King. Back in the present, Albus casually mentions he actually died in that fight, complaining about the Demon King's cheap instant kill attacks. He explains that dying sent him all the way back to the very first day his journey started. And it didn't just happen once. He kept getting looped back, forced to relive the whole quest over and over. Albus reveals his death is the exact trigger that resets time, and he sees this power less as a gift and more as a curse. She's stunned to learn this is his 36th attempt and wonders if the loop will ever end. He tells her that out of every attempt, he actually managed to kill the Demon King once in just over 5 years. As the carriage rolls forward, she's left in total disbelief that the man sitting next to her has already finished his mission once before, in another life. He drops another bombshell, admitting he once ended his own life, leaving her completely stunned as he explains why the loop keeps repeating. Riding along, he reflects on how it took him 5 tries and 13 years just to finally beat the Demon King. He remembers rushing home with the win in hand, only to be hit with news so devastating that celebrating with his family was impossible. She listens quietly, clearly moved by what he went through in that past life. He tells her he got back too late to save his dog, Lucky, kneeling standing by a small wooden grave in despair. Watching him, she starts to understand the weight of everything he lost on that first quest. Just 4 years into that journey, he'd already lost a companion, and it hit him that playing it slow and steady just wasn't good enough. If he wanted to save everyone, he had to move faster. He thinks back on tragedies he couldn't stop, like the world tree getting burned down by the Demon King's army, or the king left unable to walk in a kingdom that was supposed to be at peace. It haunts him, knowing how many lives he could have saved if he'd just been quicker. Those endless loops eventually turned into an obsession, building the perfect timeline where nobody has to suffer. He admits each new attempt gives him a strange rush, which honestly worries her a little. When she asks why he picked someone like her, he gets ready to explain. A massive roar rips through the canyon, and he senses the danger closing in, calmly nodding that the threat has finally shown up. The terrifying Blackwing dragon swoops down on them, and she screams that they're doomed and need to hide. He stays completely unfazed, brushing off her panic. Instead of running, he suggests they face it head-on, which leaves her wondering if he's actually being serious. With a confident smirk, he tells her not to worry. They've got her special magic to lean on, leaving her staring at him in silence as she processes the plan. As the dragon lands with a thunderous crash, she watches, confused, while he jumps onto a high rock to grab the monster's attention. He starts waving his arms and yelling to keep the dragon distracted, telling her to hang back and wait for the right moment to strike while the beast roars right in his face. Standing there, she remembers her lifelong dream of helping the hero, recalling news of a hero showing up in an eastern village back when she was still a kid. She finally steps up and casts Snooze, a sleep spell, the one bit of magic she's actually good at, and it knocks the massive dragon right out. With the dragon down for the count, he explains its weak spot is one specific scale on its neck, normally a brutal target to hit. He leaps into the air and lands a powerful dragon slash, noting how easy the kill is when the target can't fight back. He keeps hitting the beast over and over with everything he's got, leaving her watching from the sidelines with a look of pure discomfort. The dragon stirs a little, so he calls out for her to cast the spell again, and she does it instantly to keep the monster under. She watches him finish the job with a series of clean strikes, feeling a real sense of accomplishment, finally useful to the hero. He celebrates their win over the dragon and praises her for the huge assist, and she accepts the compliment, a little hesitant. He reveals they actually first met back during his 6th loop, which shocks her, since she thought she was just an ordinary cleric to him. After watching her sleep magic work, he realized how rare her talent really is, since very few clerics can knock out a dragon like that. He explains he's got a lot of respect for people who master a specific skill, calling it a badge of honor for how far they've come. He admits that out of everyone he's traveled with, she's his favorite, and he means it. Looking her straight in the eye, he asks if she'll join his party again, and she looks back at him, clearly moved. They seal the deal with a handshake, and he mentions this was their first big obstacle together, though his words leave her a little confused. Riding along, he mentions their success rate back then was only 60 to 70%, and they'd have been done for if the dragon had used fire breath, which makes her think he's completely insane. She introduces herself as Fiona Emir, following the hero Albus stride on his quest to defeat the Demon Lord, and the two finally reach their first town to rest for the day. Albus explains his personal record for beating the Demon Lord is just over 5 years, but he's aiming for 3 years this time around. Fiona asks if hitting that goal would finally end the looping, but she's stunned when he admits he honestly doesn't know. He plans to trade materials from a creature called a Grimwing for 5,000 gold, which leaves her completely shocked by the amount. She's excited at the thought of finally eating something other than potatoes, but Albus stops her. He's got something important to say. He points out a woman who looks distressed, and Fiona watches the lady sigh over whatever's troubling her. Just as Fiona's about to step in and help, Albus panics and tells her to wait. He needs to explain something first. With a dead serious look on his face, he warns her not to listen to a single word anyone in this town says. He explains their whole goal is finishing the journey as fast as possible, and the biggest obstacle is people's pointless requests. He points to a visibly troubled man and claims the guy's just putting on a show to get adventurers' attention. He tells her he already knows their problems are trivial stuff like lovers' spats or lost cats, and he's made up his mind about it. He concludes there's nothing wrong with ignoring all of them, and Fiona acknowledges the plan loud and clear. He tells his companion to stay focused on beating the Demon Lord before heading off to a weapon shop, telling her her not to overwork herself. Walking through town, she overhears people talking about a recent bandit attack on the western route and a new criminal base setting up. As the townspeople worry about a possible raid, a young boy walks up and asks if she's an adventurer. She feels a sharp pang of guilt when the boy tells her bandits killed his father. In tears, the kid explains the criminals stole a precious pendant that belonged to his dad and begs her to get it back. Just as she's about to promise she'll help, her companion suddenly shows up and startles both her and the boy. Startled by the young man's sudden arrival, the boy takes off running while the two adventurers watch him go. She calls her companion Albus Sama and asks if he found anything out about the local bandit gang. Albus bluntly says they're not getting involved with the bandits, leaving her visibly shaken and questioning his call. When she argues they shouldn't ignore people's suffering, Albus counters that as a hero, he can't handle every little problem. Their priority has to be the demon lord. The next day, the pair visit the feudal lord's manor where the official greets Albustono and notes his arrival. The lord eagerly asks if they plan to wipe out the bandit gang, and Albus agrees without hesitation. Confused by his sudden change of heart, Fiona whispers a reminder about his refusal the day before, but Albus tells her to relax, it's part of his time-saving plan. Albus explains that getting a pass permit from this lord will seriously shorten their journey, even as the official asks when the attack will start. To the shock of both Fiona and the Lord, Albus calmly says the job's probably already done. At the bandit stronghold, a fierce battle rages as a group of professional warriors systematically wipe out the criminals. A scarred warrior announces the job's finished and gets ready to collect payment after crushing the bandit forces. Nearby witnesses and Fiona spot the Wolf Claws banner, wondering why a legendary mercenary group would even be here. Albus proudly admits he outsourced the job to get things done fast and tells everyone to just trust the great hero's methods. Fiona wonders when he even set this up, and Albus reveals he contacted the mercenaries beforehand, right as their leader walks up to confirm who hired them. He greets the captain, who's curious how he got their secret contact information. The captain says only their most trusted contacts know that method, but he reveals someone gave him a note a long time ago. Remembering a past loop, he recalls the mercenaries helping him during a rough patch, wondering if that connection will hold in this new cycle. He recites their proud motto about the bonds of companionship and being the world's greatest mercenary group to prove he's not bluffing. Satisfied by his answer and the payment, the captain accepts the deal while Fiona watches in silence. After the captain hands him an item, he passes it to Fiona and tells her to return it as the mercenaries get ready to head out. Fiona realizes it's a pendant and wonders if this is the one the boy lost earlier. He explains he was looking for it because that group helped him a lot back in a previous loop. Watching the mercenaries walk off, he reflects on how precious memories really are while she watches his expression. Fiona kneels down on the stone path to return the lost pendant to the boy. The boy smiles with relief, clutching the pendant tight against his chest. As she thinks about how he just can't seem to ignore people in need, the scene shifts to their next destination. He tells her to hurry up and pack, they need to keep a fast pace on this journey. Fiona's shocked to learn they're flat broke since he spent all their gold hearing the mercenaries, but they're interrupted by the boy calling out to them. The boy shows up with a wagon full of supplies, offering them everything they might need as a thank you. He admits he only helped because he knew the boy's merchant family could hook them up with supplies, and she realizes it was all a calculated move. Standing before the priests, he prepares to speak as the one carrying the heavy weight of a noble destiny. He remembers his hometown, where the wheat fields would glow and everyone worked together during harvest. Inspired by that fulfilling work and the smiles of the villagers, he'd vowed to protect that peaceful scene. Expressing his deep gratitude to the priests, he says how proud he is to be the chosen hero protecting such a wonderful world. He declares to the heavens that hell defeat the demon lord for the sake of world peace, while two onlookers watch in silence. The gathered clergy are deeply moved by his noble spirit, applauding and calling him Hero Albus. The Church of St. Carlos pledges their full support to Albus, who thanks them before asking to take some holy water from their fountain. Even though the fountain's normally kept sealed, the priest gives Albus special permission and leads him to the sacred water. The group watches with satisfaction as they get ready to collect the water. Albus immediately directs his hired crew to move in and start collecting, now that they've been granted access. The priest is stunned by the sheer volume of legendary holy water Albus is taking, which the group plans to use as their main tool for keeping monsters away. Albus explains using the water will save time by avoiding unnecessary fights, while Fiona remembers the hardship of their last journey when they had to disguise themselves in bear furs just to survive. When Fiona starts splashing water on their horse, Albus warns her the effect won't last long and offers to show her a more efficient method. The two continue their journey in a carriage now rigged with several elevated barrels that spray water non-stop. Albus explains his invention, a holy water sprinkler system built through a series of modifications, and while Fiona's impressed, she worries he'll get punished for using the water like this. Fiona says how moved she was by his earlier speech, remarking that Albus has always had a noble heart even as a kid. Albus smirks and reveals that emotional speech was nothing but a calculated lie, leaving Fiona completely shocked by the deception. Rattled by the reveal, Fiona demands to know his real reason for continuing this journey, what's actually driven him this far. Albus confesses he originally set out on a whim, thinking being a hero meant everyone would spoil him, a reason Fiona finds shockingly shallow and selfish. He admits he naively figured beating the Demon Lord would be easy, something he could just wing, and Fiona realizes just how clueless he really was. Fiona's filled with worry, realizing the hero she admired is actually cowardly and uncaring, while Albus just laughs off her concern. Albus reflects that his immature thinking is exactly why he's failed before, and Fiona starts to regret agreeing to come along. Looking ahead with a more somber expression, Albus admits he's carrying a lot of regret right now. As they ride on, Fiona watches him closely, wondering if there's anything else he's still hiding. She's about to ask him the real reason behind the loop when an arrow suddenly slams into the ground near their carriage. They realize they've been ambushed by a goblin horde hiding in the trees, bows drawn. While she panics about being surrounded, he notes the annoying pattern in their attack, observing the goblins are smart enough to use ranged weapons to dodge their holy water. She urges him to run, but he stays calm, explaining a quick escape's impossible now. Something heavy is closing in. A massive troll bursts out of the forest, and he notes the goblins brought in some heavy backup. He casually breaks down how the monsters cover each other's weaknesses, ignoring her frantic warning that they're outnumbered and running low on holy water as the sun starts to set. He stays composed, saying the smart way to handle a crisis is to spend the least amount of energy possible. He explains a horde this size needs a leader, and spotting a goblin with unique headwear or jewelry is the key to breaking their formation. Despite his theory, he claims he can't spot the leader yet, as the monsters keep taunting them from the shadows. Suddenly, a precise shot flies through the trees and nails a decorated goblin leader right in the head, sending the ranks into instant chaos. He reveals he was lying about not knowing the leader's location. He'd already memorized their predictable attack pattern. Left without its commander, the massive troll stands there confused, listening to the panicked goblins around it. The troll suddenly snaps into a rage and charges straight at the horse and carriage. As she screams out to Albus in terror, he gets ready to counter the charge by hoisting a big barrel from the wagon. Albus throws the barrel with perfect timing, nailing the charging troll right in the face and shattering it on impact. She realizes the barrel was full of holy water as the troll screams in agony, the liquid burning its skin. Seizing the opening, Albus draws his blade and unleashes a powerful upward strike called the upper draft. The strike splits the monster's head open and sends the remaining goblins fleeing, but she quickly warns him another wave's already coming. They're immediately hit by a second troll and even more goblins, forcing Albus to call for a retreat as things escalate fast. Surrounded again, Albus tells the group to find the new leader immediately, determined to end this fight for good. The group stands before a massive fallen creature as smaller monsters flee into the woods, and he looks on with a somber expression. She asks him for his real motivation as he steps away from the giant monster's remains and starts walking forward. Gripping the hilt of his sword, he confesses his reason for fighting is that there's someone he wants to save. Then he immediately admits that was a lie, leaving her stunned as he turns his back and keeps moving. A year's passed since their journey began, and they've been heading north across the Enner's continent toward the Demon King's castle in Galma. Noticing they're heading away from the port of Lunnon, she questions the route, but Albus explains they're not taking a ship this time. Albus reveals they're using an ancient warp gate to jump straight to central Galmut and save time, despite her shock that a relic like that even exists nearby. He warns Fiona the road ahead is full of risks and hardship, but he hopes she'll keep following him anyway. Fiona feels a wave of dread as the two approach a secluded, crumbling shrine hidden in the forest. Once inside the ruins, Albus points out a fully functional warp gate standing between two ancient pillars. He explains the gate's been running on limitless energy for over 1,000 years, ever since ancient wizards first built it. An old man suddenly appears, recognizing Albus as the hero he's been waiting for. Claiming to have guarded the place for 40 years, the old man gives the hero permission to use the gate however he wants. The Guardian tries to mention a catch involving a dying wish, but Albus grabs the girl and bolts to avoid the whole conversation. While fleeing, Albus admits he's just trying to skip a long detour, though she feels guilty for brushing off the old man's plea. Albus anticipates the man's full pitch about a rare rainbow gem and how they'll need to help track it down. The old man explains the gem's hidden in a western dungeon, but they soon find out you need a magic key just to get inside. Their quest turns into a chain of errands, retrieving a stolen flame staff from a monster's fortress just to trade it with a southern merchant for the key. Albus grows furious over an entire year wasted on this string of side tasks, while the Guardian stays fixated on just catching a glimpse of the gem. The old man finally introduces himself as Marius the Wise Wizard, prompting Albus to ask if the gem's really the only thing he's after. The old man stalls for time, offering a flower and asking the young hero to hear his life story, while she watches with a skeptical look. He starts telling a tale from his youth about a woman named Cecile, the daughter of a tavern owner, while the others whisper among themselves. To chase his magic training, he decided to leave her behind, promising to come back one day with a rare rainbow gem. Decades have passed since then, and the old man says he wishes he could see her again, asking the girl to help him fulfill this one last request. Stepping forward, she appears dressed in a tavern outfit, looking exactly like the woman from his memories. She greets him as Marius, and he's instantly overwhelmed, convinced he's finally seeing Cecile again as they hold hands. He apologizes for never bringing the gem, but as she tells him to forget the promise, he suddenly pauses, doubting whether Cecile was even the right person. The old man recalls another woman, Emeralda, an exotic dancer, leaving her completely baffled by his shifting memories. Now dressed as the dancer, she listens as he repeats his promise about the gem, while the young hero wonders how the old man's this well prepared for all this. The old man keeps second-guessing himself, suggesting the promise might been made to a bunny girl named Mary, and she realizes his past was way more scandalous than expected. Despite her intense embarrassment, she changes into the bunny outfit, earning a compliment from her companion while she hides her face. The young hero asks if the old man's finally satisfied, but the elder's so caught up in the moment that she has to physically hold him back. After the charade ends, the old man thanks them for letting him relive his dreams, while she remarks on just how eventful his romantic life must been. He reflects on all his regrets, wondering if sticking with just one person would've changed his life, before asking the hero for his take. The young hero firmly says he intends to reach a perfect ending, without any regrets of his own. The group carries on their journey, eventually settling their horse around a campfire in the woods for the night. The young man and the elder spend the evening laughing and swapping stories by the fire, while she watches their bonding. Genuinely enjoying himself, he says he liked the old man's wild stories and hopes to hear more someday. Struck by a sudden sense of déjà vu, the old man asks if they've met somewhere before. Standing before an ancient stone gateway in the cave, the group prepares to move forward as the hero leaves the horse in her care. The old man stares at Albus, wondering just how many loops he survived in his current body, before turning to the young woman nearby. Noticing a deep sadness in her eyes, he asks if she suffered a tragedy, while Albus watches quietly. The old man casts a spell meant to bring light beyond her sadness, and a powerful flash of energy erupts between the two travelers. She finds herself alone on a cliff overlooking the Demon King's castle, calling out for her companions until a voice answers her from nearby. She finds Albus stuck face down in a rock and mocks his predicament, suggesting he stay there for 10 hours as payback for his usual antics. Albus tries to bribe his way out by complimenting Fiona's looks in her past outfits, and it actually works, knocking his sentence down to 5 hours. During a quiet moment on the road, Fiona notices Albus is carrying a sword with a noticeable chip in the blade. Albus defends the weapon as an irreplaceable partner and shifts attention to a companion's damaged helmet, which the man insists still holds the spirit of a legendary hero. A woman in the party stresses the importance of investing investing in solid equipment, while Albus reflects on how far they've all come together. The group arrives at the massive gates of the Demon King's castle, ready for their final confrontation. In the present, Fiona spots a magical phenomenon and Albus asks to take a look at whatever she found. They use an elvish magnifying glass to check their stats, revealing Fiona's hit level 21 while Albus is at level 36. Albus uses the tool to peek at Fiona's private stats, and she shrieks and hides in embarrassment. Fiona makes excuses about her weight, blaming village food, right before the glass reveals a level 65 monster closing in from behind. A massive manticore leaps out of the shadows and slams the ground exactly where Fiona was just standing. 4 months into their journey on the Galmut continent, the two get cornered by the multi-eyed predator as it lets out a roar. They duck behind a rock to dodge the beast, thinking back on their long trek past the elven village toward enemy territory. Looking at the fortress in the distance, Fiona asks why they're delaying the assault on the Demon King's castle. Albus explains the Demon King's level 150, and without more training, they'd get wiped out instantly. Pointing at a map, Albus says they need to travel the continent first to gather the best gear before they're actually ready. He notices Fiona's still using her beginner staff and suggests checking out a nearby cave where a more powerful amplifier might be waiting. Fiona glances down at her weapon before calling out to Albus, firmly saying she wants to keep using the staff she already has. She explains it was a graduation gift from her teacher, and the sentimental value gives her the strength to keep going. After checking the staff with an appraisal mirror, Albus bluntly calls it low-level trash, insisting harsh as it sounds, the numbers are the only reality that matters. He reflects that things like wishes and expectations tend to fall apart in the heat of a real fight. In his mind, those feelings are basically meaningless against the crushing weight of raw power. Tightening his grip on his sword, Albus apologizes for being blunt, but says his only real goal is to win. Fiona accepts his logic and resolves to work harder, deciding to turn her teacher's legacy into raw strength since the staff alone can't do it. Albus agrees they should move out and Fiona follows behind, now motivated to succeed for both her mentor and her partner. The two push forward through treacherous crystal caverns, fight off massive aquatic monsters, and scavenge rare treasure along the way. 2 years pass as they grow stronger, eventually reaching a desolate mountain range where a winged beast prowls the cliffs. The multi-eyed creature spots Fiona and lunges forward with a deafening roar. Now at level 52, Fiona summons her chrono chains to bind the monster in place, signaling Albus to take the lead. Albus unleashes a devastating Millennium Curse Strike, driving a massive, skull-topped mace straight into the enemy. The impact is so violent it strips the flesh right off the beast, leaving nothing but a shattered skeleton and Fiona standing there in disbelief. Albus shows off his weapon, a horrific fusion of cursed gear, blood-stained axes, and insane swords held together by holy materials to protect him from the backlash. Now at level 86, Albus brags about the mace's unmatched attack power, though Fiona still questions the sanity of wielding something that cursed. She remembers the terrifying sight of the dwarf blacksmith who forged it, swinging between fits of crying and manic laughter the whole time. Standing before the silhouette of their final destination, Albus vows to destroy the Demon King with his dark power, leaving Fiona wondering if he's turning into a monster himself. Deep inside the Demon King's castle, a demon scout reports that a hero's finally trespassed onto their turf. Valgo, a general in the Demon King's army known as the Unwavering Darkness, dismisses the threat as nothing more than insects. Sitting in his chambers, he vows to personally take out the intruders before they can disturb the Demon King. The general debates whether to burn or crush his enemies before deciding to tear them apart limb from limb, certain the second they walk in will be their last. Instead of using the front door, a boy and his companion pop up out of a secret hatch in the floor right behind the general's seat. With a casual greeting, the boy swings a massive spiked weapon, crushing the general and his throne in a single preemptive strike. The explosion draws nearby guards' attention, but the duo ignores the wreckage and pushes forward, brushing off the arrival of more henchmen. A bloodied Valgo survives the hit and lashes out in a rage, unable to believe mere insects would dare strike him. She quickly throws up an ether barrier shield, neutralizing the massive dark vortex the desperate general just launched. As Valgo finally collapses in defeat, the surrounding minions flee in terror, shaken by the sheer power of the boy's strange weapon. The intruders push through the castle, dodging every hidden trap and scythe with ease, leaving the guards baffled at how they know every secret passage. He explains he's visited this fortress so many times it practically feels like home, then suggests they take a short break before hitting the main throne room. While resting, she asks why they're taking on such a dangerous mission with only 2 people instead of a full party. He admits he's traveled with plenty of groups before, but says too many people tends to cause problems when speed's the priority. He explains that for this specific journey, he decided 2 people would be enough to get the job done. He recalls his very first party, 2 veterans, an elite warrior named Lauro and a magic prodigy named Gina. Both were highly skilled and could protect him well, but their quirks made them a pain to manage. They just weren't built for a fast-paced journey. Lauro only moved at his own pace, and Gina constantly complained about her pay. Another possible ally was a mercenary commander named Whirl, a steady companion, but way too much effort to convince to join. His past roster also included a sharp-tongued bandit named Toko, who kept picking fights, and a knowledgeable stargazer named Avel, who was always distracted by family stuff. The list of former companions grew to include an elf, a hermit, a bard, and even a half-beast, each one bringing their own drama to the group. She asks why she was the one he picked out of everyone else. He jokes that her low self-esteem made her easy to convince, then quickly says he's just kidding. When she calls herself just an ordinary adventurer, he asks if she's really never noticed her own potential. He tells Fiona straight up that she's become an adventurer he trusts to watch his back. She looks at him in surprise as he flashes a confident, reassuring smile. He acknowledges her healing skills for treating severe wounds and her sharp judgment when it comes to magic support. He reminds her of when they first met and insists she's the best possible choice because she never loses hope. He points to her growth and her refusal to give up as exactly what keeps her moving forward. Resting by the fire, he tells her to relax. She's just another stubborn fool who won't quit, same as him. She asks if he really thinks she's that gullible, and he insists he's telling the truth. He confirms he's not lying, which finally gets her to smile and accept his words. His expression turns serious as they reach a massive gate and prepare to start the mission. They move into the hall and head toward the throne room, weapons ready. He explains the Demon King's a unique entity that gets reborn by possessing a human host. He confirms the current Demon King was originally human, resurrected over and over. Fiona's stunned by the revelation, while her companion stays silent and focused. The battle breaks out without warning, catching her off guard as she grips her staff. She realizes with a shock that the massive armored figure in front of them is the Demon King himself. The Demon King raises his sword as the boy readies his massive mace for the fight. The 2 fighters clash violently, sending a shockwave through the room as their weapons collide. A fierce duel erupts between him and the massive armored entity while she watches from the sidelines, realizing this fight's on a level she can't even join. The armored demon mocks hero Albus for showing up with only 2 people, but he clarifies it's not arrogance, it's a choice. After sizing up his opponent, Albus sighs that the demon can't even judge its own level, which gets a smirk and a challenge back. As they clash, Albus realizes keeping his distance would just let the demon unleash an overpowered instant death spell. Deciding close-range combat is the only real option, Albus shocks the demon by revealing this is actually their 20th time meeting. He immediately goes on the offensive, unleashing a cursed club barrage that pounds the demon with high-speed blows. Watching the fight, she notices Albus is completely dominating, reading the Demon King's movements and using the terrain perfectly. She's now fully convinced he wasn't lying about the 20 repeated encounters, while the demon starts to find the situation genuinely troublesome. Desperate to reclaim the advantage, the demon prepares to unleash magic point-blank, not caring about the damage to its own armor, and it catches him off guard. Elsewhere in the castle hallway, a badly wounded subordinate crawls across the floor, desperately calling out for the Demon King. The subordinate, Valgo, vows to bury the intruders before a sudden blinding flash of light erupts at the end of the corridor. A massive energy beam tears through the castle walls, blasting out into the surrounding mountains. Back in the throne room, the Demon King stands before a massive crater, admitting he didn't mean to cause that much destruction. Claiming Albus has finally gotten on his nerves, the demon looks down at the hero, now lying wounded on the floor. The demon acknowledges her ability, nodding she managed to throw up a defensive barrier for her ally in that split second. Shifting his focus, the demon approaches her, claiming he can crush her without breaking a sweat as he reaches out. The creature looms over her in silence as she stares up in fear, feeling the dire shift in momentum. Still on the ground, Albus curses the Demon King's chaotic nature, noting this exact blow is something he's never faced in any of his previous attempts. Despite fighting this battle countless times before, he reflects on the demon's sheer unpredictability while struggling to keep his composure. Forcing himself to stand, bloodied hand and all, he calls the demon's attention back to himself, protecting his companion. A fierce blow lands directly on the armored figure's head. The impact shatters the creature's helmet as a hand wrapped in sharp fragments delivers a crushing strike. Fiona is horrified to see Albus has wrapped cursed weapon shards around his own arm to boost his power, readying yet another weapon. Albus knows he's not going for a clean win and targets the enemy's very human weaknesses instead. He drives his blade into a vital point, declaring the creature's weaknesses are exactly the same as a human's. As the enemy collapses, Albus turns to Fiona, saying there's something important he needs to tell her. The defeated foe lies motionless on the floor as the two stand over the body. Fiona asks if the fight's really over, immediately panicking over Albus' arm badly mangled by the curse. As she starts healing him, Albus explains their whole journey was about streamlining the team and cutting out delays. He reflects on the 3.5 years it took to gather the gear they needed and asks if they actually pulled it off in time. The dying enemy coughs up blood, weakly addressing Albus as the hero. Fiona finds the moment unsettling and asks Albus to finish what he was about to say. She starts to feel a strange familiarity with whoever's behind the mask as a dark aura begins rising from the body. A black shadow suddenly rises from the remains, catching everyone's attention as they wonder what just left the corpse. Their other companions arrive to celebrate the victory, rejoicing over the Demon King's defeat. Albus smiles briefly, then quickly warns everyone to stay back when he realizes the person inside the armor is still alive. The heavy armor fades away, revealing a young man covered in cursed marks, breathing heavily. The group realizes this person was just a vessel for the Demon King, and while he begs for a quick death, Albus wonders if there's still a chance to save him. The suffering man cries out that he doesn't want to be possessed anymore, and he doesn't care what happens to him now. With his final breaths, he begs them to save another child, because the Demon King's soul is already moving to its next chosen host. The story continues as a group stands together while an ominous voice declares them children marked by a curse. A girl calls out to her brother as the young man looks up in shock, sensing a sudden heavy shift in the air. Dark markings spread across her face as she reaches toward him with a sinister, possessed expression. A blade flashes in an instant, blood spattering across his face as he stares in disbelief at what just happened. He realizes he failed to step in on time as the girl, now addressed as Albus-sama, stares back with a hollow gaze and a distorted face. The possessed girl smiles and apologizes for failing to kill him instantly, revealing her surprise that he's been looping through time this whole time. He looks at her with a grim, heavy expression, telling her not to call him that and addressing her as the Demon King instead. The entity says it's surprised the backup vessel it chose was so close by, questioning why he'd bother bringing the girl all this way. He recalls how he's beaten this entity again and again across different timelines, only for it to keep possessing Fiona every single time. The entity describes how it turns every place it touches into a sea of blood, standing victorious amid the ruins of a destroyed city. Refusing to let Fiona be used for something so horrific, he draws his weapon and prepares to fight, and the entity dares him to try and stop it. In a memory, he consults a companion about the girl being a vessel, asking if there's any way to stop the possession before it starts. Inside a vast library, the companion warns they need to hurry, since a vessel needs a specific amount of time to be fully prepared for the Demon King. The companion pitches a final plan to defeat the Demon King before her body can ever become a completed vessel. Back in the present, he lunges at her in a desperate attempt to stop the transformation before it reaches its final stage. As blood spills, he laments another failure while the entity mocks his futile struggle, asking if they're just going to restart the loop again. Holding her, he declares his resolve to save her no matter what, as a brilliant light begins to envelop them both. He activates his ultimate dimensional magic, aiming for one thing to change the very fabric of the world and rewrite history. The entity reacts in shock as the world starts to rewind, and he vows to defeat the Demon King before the possession can even begin. She finds herself at the gates of a large city, feeling completely out of place, until a sudden commotion breaks out and guards mistake him for a kidnapper. He reveals an insignia to a group of soldiers and a girl, shocking them as they realize he's actually the chosen hero, Albus Stride. Looking straight at the girl, Fiona Umel, he asks her to join his party. 7 years earlier, a woman named Merida finds young Albus buried in stacks of books, studying late into the night. Albus explains that even though the magic teachers from the capital keep sending him endless material, he's already read most of it, and Merida notes just how heavy the expectations on a chosen hero really are. Looking out into the night, Albus admits he knows about the rumors calling him a fraud or an orphan that go around behind his back. Instead of letting it get him down, he claims those voices only give him more strength to defeat the Demon King, and Merida comments on his weirdly twisted personality. Merida embraces him and tells him she's looking forward to seeing him succeed. Back in the present, a weary Albus reflects on those distant memories, lamenting that he's failed to make it in time yet again. He reveals he used magic to rewind the world after the Demon King possessed Fiona's body, forcing everything back to the day of his departure. Now stuck in his 37th loop, Albus starts his journey once more, riding in a carriage with the unsuspecting girl. Resting at a campfire that night, Albus is interrupted by a panicked call from his companion. A large slime shows up in front of them, but Albus stays indifferent, telling her to handle the monster however she likes. When she admits she's afraid of slimy creatures, Albus recalls their past interactions before stepping forward to effortlessly slice through it. He points out the slime's core, explaining one hit there is all it takes for a kill, quietly nodding to himself they've had this exact conversation countless times before. Albus reassures the frightened girl she'll be fine, since they've already faced much stronger enemies, though privately he thinks about just how hard it is to train someone from scratch. He watches her closely, knowing she'll grow stronger eventually, but dreading the possibility of another tragic ending. As he tries to rest, she alerts him to yet another monster, making him wish a certain annoying ally were here to help. She's immediately captivated by a small, round creature she finds adorable, but Albus instantly recognizes it as a major threat. He identifies it as a hipstar, also known as a phantom rat, a creature that specializes in dangerous illusion magic. The creature's magic quickly takes hold of her, making her hallucinate a field of flowers and take off running while Albus struggles to stop her. The story opens at an orphanage, where a woman cares for 6 children and a dog, all on her own. A young boy nearby asks the woman, Merida, if she finds the work exhausting, since the kids are basically strangers to her. Merida's stunned by the dark outlook of the 7-year-old as he explains that dealing with people is a hassle, and that he was simply an unwanted kid, abandoned by his parents. To break his gloomy mood, she suddenly pinches his cheeks, demanding he stop making such a sad face. She explains the reason she sticks around is because being surrounded by smiles is her personal key to enjoying life. Watching the warmth of the kids playing and eating together, he realizes this is exactly the kind of environment he wants to build someday. Merida smiles at him, wondering what kind of world little Albus will create once he grows up to be a hero. Years later, at a quiet campfire, Albus tries to build rapport with Fiona by asking where she's from. The two make small talk about a northern town called Tome, her favorite local nut pies, and her love for animals. Albus keeps peppering her with questions about siblings and pets to lighten the mood, but his intensity makes her worry she's being reevaluated for how useful she is. Fiona eventually opens up, revealing she once had an older brother, though the memory clearly weighs heavy on her. She explains her brother disappeared when she was only 4, likely a victim of the monster attacks that spiked after the Demon King's revival. Her whole reason for joining the hero's party was a personal vow to make sure fewer people go through the same loss she did. When Fiona asks about his family, Albus mentions someone at the orphanage who was like a mother figure to him for as long as he could remember. He recounts the tragic day that woman finally passed away, leaving a void in the lives of all the kids there. Albus was only 10 when she died from an illness, which led him to the cold realization that people die far too easily. Even with his ability to change the world, he laments that he can't rewind time far enough to save her, and concludes he just has to aim for a perfect future instead. He says he wants to build a world just like the one Merida built, but he stops when he notices Fiona looking at him with a pained expression. Despite the sadness in her eyes, she puts on a smile and tells him that smiling is the key to moving forward. In that moment, Albus reaffirms his resolve to save the person he cares about most, Merida. The story takes place in the town of Tome, up on the northern continent. Inside a tavern, a man named Byron drinks heavily while his companions comment on his excessive habit, mentioning his beloved student recently left on a journey. Smoking his pipe, Byron wonders out loud if Fiona-chan actually managed to join the hero's party. The story shifts to the journey to defeat the Demon Lord, where the group had just calmed a bandit uprising in the city of Sepata before heading to a dungeon called Orbel's underground tomb. Deep within the tomb, the boss monster Castor the Wraith waits for them. He encourages Fiona to do her best, but she's left confused, wondering why she's even standing in such a dangerous place. He explains their strategy hit the fastest time possible by taking unconventional routes to skip unnecessary fights and gear gathering. This time, he's decided they'll focus on efficient leveling by quickly taking down bosses for massive experience. He claims this particular boss is perfect for Fiona, though she's frozen with fear as the creature looms over her. As the Wraith attacks, he grabs Fiona and pulls her to safety, shouting at her not to just stand there. He reminds her their opponent's just an undead monster. He explains undead creatures are weak to healing magic and urges her to cast a spell for massive damage, but Fiona finds herself frozen in place. He gives her a knowing look, telling her to try harder, and it triggers a specific memory. In a flashback, her old teacher Byron questions why she isn't using healing magic on low-level spirits, asking if she can't handle them alone. Byron warns her that people with big dreams of joining a hero's party, people who underestimate the world, are always the first to die. Back in the present tavern, Byron describes his student as a hopeless scaredy-cat with a poor memory, left at the monastery when she was just 5 years old. Despite his complaining, his friends point out he still trained her, and Byron admits her persistence is genuinely remarkable. He reflects on why she pushes herself so hard, figuring it probably comes back to a specific event involving him. A memory surfaces of the day her brother disappeared, a voice calling out for Fiona to come to them. Young Fiona follows the mysterious voice, still calling to her from somewhere just outside the door. The story begins in a quiet hallway where a young boy stops a girl by holding her hand, pleading with her not to leave. Reassuring her that everything will be alright, the boy calls her Fiona before letting go and walking away. Fiona watches from a distance as his figure suddenly vanishes into thin air among the trees. That traumatic moment left Fiona with a deep-seated belief that her brother had sacrificed his life entirely for her. Smoking his pipe, the old man explains to his companions that Fiona felt she needed to live her whole life for the sake of others. He suggests that's exactly why she admires the hero so much, even as she worries about being a burden while he carries her through a dangerous area. After they tumble to the ground, Fiona immediately shouts for Albus as the old man reflects on her inherent kindness. The old man notes that despite all her worries, Fiona has immense strength once she sets her mind to protecting someone. Seeing Albus injured and kneeling on the stone floor, Fiona steps forward and unleashes a powerful healing spell. The old man keeps praising her, saying Fiona could become the strongest cleric out there if she just had a little more confidence and someone to back her up. He hopes someone will finally tell her she'll be fine, just as Albus praises the quality of the healing magic she just used. Albus looks at her with a smile, saying he always knew she'd be fine, and it makes Fiona wonder how her teacher's doing. While Fiona feels grateful to be traveling with the hero, the old man back at the tavern starts to cry as his friends tease him for being lonely. As their journey continues by carriage, Fiona spots a group of large, flightless birds sprinting across the open plains. Albus explains these are Kebble big birds, native animals known for their incredible running speed. He mentions they're not exactly smart and tend to follow each other blindly without really knowing why, though Fiona finds them pretty cute. Watching the birds, Albus remarks that their habit of running without hesitation reminds him of a certain person. He recalls a brave, reckless warrior who'd charge headlong into enemy lines no matter who he was up against, and starts to mention his name. Their conversation gets cut off by the birds squawking as the group finally arrives at the city of Kabelia. Entering the city, Albus asks Fiona to run some errands for him, handing her a detailed map with the shortest route marked out. Looking at the map, he points out a shortcut between two tool shops through a residential area, but she finds the pathway too confusing and runs off in another direction entirely. She walks into a weapon shop where an old shopkeeper welcomes her warmly and asks what kind of equipment she's after. She asks for a silver sword and gets invited to browse, but her companion warns her to be extremely careful with this shopkeeper. He explains the old man's actually a shrewd businessman who sees her as an easy target, even as the shopkeeper keeps up a fake saintly smile to hide his true intentions. While the shopkeeper secretly plans to overcharge her for a worn-out sword and useless extra gear, she starts feeling uncomfortable and wants to leave right as an angry customer bursts through the door. A tall man shouts that the sword he bought only yesterday's already broken, catching the shopkeeper off guard as he recognizes him from their last deal. The man approaches aggressively while the shopkeeper nervously mentions there are no refunds, privately recalling he'd intentionally sold him a dud sword. Unexpectedly, the man shouts a loud apology and bows deeply, leaving both the shopkeeper and the girl completely stunned by the sudden shift. Introducing himself as Lauro Liberio, the man blames his own lack of experience for the broken blade and insists on buying another one, embarrassment and all. She jumps in and warns him he's being scammed, but the shopkeeper just snickers while Lauro looks on, confused by her outburst. Lauro grabs the old man's head and insists someone with such a kind face couldn't possibly be a bad person, prompting the shopkeeper to gleefully offer him another leftover sword. As the shopkeeper presents a new blade, Lauro stops him, specifically demanding the same blunt sword as yesterday, insisting anything else would be pointless for his goals. Lauro smiles and asks if the shopkeeper sold him a blunt sword on purpose to train him into a warrior capable of mastering any weapon. With an intense, pressuring stare, he asks if his theory's correct, forcing the intimidated shopkeeper to drop the act and offer a discount on the spot. Lauro walks away laughing with his new dull sword, ready to keep training, while she watches him go, struggling to understand his logic. When asked if he really doesn't care about being cheated, he explains life rarely goes as planned, and only his own perception and actions truly matter. He declares with a sharp smile that everything in this world's just a trial, designed to help him become the strongest warrior. Changing the subject, he asks if she has any information about the hero known as Albus Stride. He explains he traveled to the royal capital to join the Demon King subjugation team, but felt something was off while waiting for the departure ceremony at the castle gate. Lauro describes deciding to wait in the castle town instead, where he eventually caught sight of the hero riding by in a carriage. He runs out into the street, desperately trying to catch someone's attention as they pass by. He gets immediately run over by the carriage and suspects the driver actually sped up on purpose, but he stays determined despite her concern. As he recovers on the ground, the youth standing before him asks why he's suddenly appeared there. He quickly kneels in the dirt, addressing the youth as Hero Albus and explaining his only goal was to follow him. With a confident smile, he assures Albus he's certain he'll be a huge asset on the journey ahead. Albus rejects him flat out, saying he has no idea who this guy is and that hell only slow things down, but Lauro takes the dismissal as just another trial to overcome. Albus sighs at his relentless attitude, calling him a positive fool as a pack of creatures gallops away in the distance. Inside the Demon King's castle, a wounded Albus stands over the exhausted man and asks if their struggle's finally over. He ignores his own injuries to ask about the Demon King's fate and specifically about Fiona's condition. After glancing toward Fiona's fallen body, he asks if Albus plans to start everything over, and Albus simply confirms he has to. Albus places a hand on the warrior and calls him Lauro, promising they'll make it in time on the next attempt. Albus gives him one final smile and tells Lauro he's fired from the next loop, leaving him completely confused as the scene fades back to the castle. Back in the present, Lauro acknowledges the cold shoulder he's getting, but repeats his vow to prove useful to Albus once more. He proudly introduces himself as Lauro Liberio and declares his ambition to one day become the strongest warrior in the world. Fiona whispers to Albus, asking about the stranger's identity, and Albus explains Lauro was a former companion, wondering why he showed up here off the original plan. Albus weighs the importance of party discipline and coordination, since finishing the journey fast depends on it. He remembers Lauro as a major troublemaker who accepted every local request and dragged the group into reckless fights that put them all in danger. Because he never gave up or looked back, plenty of people called him a positive fool or even a positive berserker. Lauro interrupts their whispering to ask what they're discussing, insisting he won't accept being rejected without a chance to prove himself right then and there. Before he can show off his skills, a massive man grabs both him and Albus, while an elderly man nearby announces he's found 2 lively new recruits. An old man breaks up a potential street fight by suggesting a competition and leads everyone to a large racing venue. Several riders sit atop giant birds, getting ready for the event to start. The organizer introduces the group to the famous Big Bird race of Kabylia City. He explains the local pastime involves people betting and cheering on riders as they race the Kebble birds. Since they're short on jockeys for the day, the man offers the group a spot, and Loro bets his party membership on the outcome. Albus asks why his companion's so desperate to join him, and Loro confirms his resolve without hesitation. Albus points out that his original goal was just to get stronger, not defeat the Demon King, and Loro recalls seeing a recruitment poster for the hero's party. Loro admits seeing Albus in the royal capital triggered something deep inside him, a feeling he'd never had before. He describes it as a fire in his heart commanding him to follow Albus, even though he can't fully explain why. Albus stares back in silence, taking in the weight of his companion's confession. The crowd roars as the race officially kicks off, one lap around the track to settle the whole thing. As the birds take off, Albus grabs an immediate lead, leaving the onlookers and the organizer stunned. A memory surfaces of the 2 of them sitting defeated among the ruins, where Loro realized he'd been fired from the group. Albus explained that memories don't carry over for others when he uses his power to rewind the world, yet Loro still vowed to find him again anyway. Back in the present race, Albus figures their past connections irrelevant, but Loro stays focused on closing the gap. Loro's heart burns with frustration at his own powerlessness as he remembers the sight of Fiona lying injured in the past. Tears stream down his face as he remembers his failure and his desperate, unfulfilled wish to save her. The organizer and Fiona notice Loro making an aggressive move from the outside, radiating an unusual, intense energy. Refusing to let the fire inside him die out, Loro pushes his bird to the absolute limit to overtake the leaders. As Loro celebrates his victory before the cheering crowd, Albus smiles in acknowledgement, while Loro reflects that he'd already lost his heart the moment they first met. Seeking validation for his skills, he asks the hero if he's finally earned his approval while the others watch with excitement, but the hero's just creeped out by his intense stare. The blonde man introduces himself as Albus, saying he's counting on the warrior from now on, and the 2 seal their new partnership with a firm fist bump. The next day, the group waits by their carriage as Fiona worries Loro might overslept, while Albus gets irritated and suggests they just leave him behind. A memory surfaces of a younger Loro running toward his mother, proudly declaring his dream to become the strongest warrior just like his father, as his parents watch with warm smiles. The dream turns into a somber reality at a funeral where Loro stands before his mother's casket, realizing he can no longer show her the strongest version of himself. As the young boy weeps over his loss, his father stands before him and gives a firm command he must become strong. Loro clenches his fist tight, committing to the idea of becoming stronger than anyone else. 3 days have passed since the party left the city of Kabylia, and now they're traveling north through the old road in Rhonda's forest. Albus suddenly finds himself running for his life, chased by a horde of aggressive plant monsters, screaming for help as the others watch from the carriage. While Albus keeps struggling, Fiona notes this road's clearly a monster den, which explains why it's abandoned, and Loro questions why their leader's just playing around. Albus insists this dangerous route is a necessary shortcut before luring the monsters into position and signaling Loro that it's finally time to act. Loro takes the signal and unleashes a powerful landslide attack with his blade, burying the whole group of plant monsters under falling earth and rock. The force of the attack sends Albus tumbling down the slope in a panic while Loro calmly watches the strike land perfectly. After Albus climbs back up to safety, Loro sits in the carriage and mentions 3 days of traveling together has led him to a realization about his companions. He turns to Fiona first, bluntly telling her she's far too scared of combat and needs to find more confidence in herself, which leaves her startled. Loro then shifts his criticism to Albus, demanding he actually start fighting too, since he's done nothing but give orders or run away since the trip started. He vents his frustration at having to do all the fighting himself, challenging the hero to actually show his strength and prove what it means to be strong. Albus questions if being strong even matters that much, and Loro snaps back that they can't afford to be weak if they're they're serious about beating the Demon King. The harsh words hit Fiona hard and she breaks down crying over her own weakness, while Albus scolds Laro for making her cry. As the carriage rolls on, Laro reflects on his origins. Born in the southwestern part of the Kingdom of Ardelia, near the border of Zyrum and Ardelia, a lord tasked with defending the territory stands with his son Laro, pointing out the enemy's fortress. The lord explains that while the Demon King's revival forced a temporary truce, future conflicts inevitable, a reality Laro quietly accepts. Inspired by his father's reputation as a formidable warrior, Laro vows at his mother's grave to grow even stronger for her sake. Years of peaceful training follow as Laro rises to become captain of the Southern Guard, leading his men through relentless drills. Laro pushes his subordinates to double their training distance despite their exhaustion, finding personal satisfaction in his own growing power. Convinced his father will eventually praise his progress, Laro keeps dominating the training grounds with intense combat practice. During a sparring session, Laro taunts his opponent for being too weak and demands they keep going until a soldier interrupts to summon him. The Lord meets Laro with harsh news, saying because no one would follow a man like him, he won't inherit the lordship. After being stripped of his captaincy, a devastated Laro pleads for a chance to prove himself through even greater strength. His father counters that Laro actually needs to understand weakness, warning him life rarely unfolds the way you want it to. After years of wandering to find his own path, Laro sits in a carriage until a companion snaps him out of a daze to warn of an approaching threat. Suddenly, a massive treant emerges from the trees, looming directly over the carriage and its occupants. While the others panic and suggest a retreat, Laro stays calm, confidently saying he could kill the creature himself. Laro's companion urges him to wait and hear out a specific strategy before charging straight into the giant monster's path. The group watches the monster as he starts coordinating a plan to use Fiona as bait to draw it out. The strategy involves leading the treant to a designated spot where they'll trip it with a rope and force it to fall. The companion explains the target will fall into a ditch Laro dug earlier, letting him finally unleash his full power in a safe valley. Following the plan, Laro launches himself high into the air, positioning for a decisive strike against the massive creature. As Laro readies his fire spirit, his companions recall how his inability to hold back once caused a forest fire, noting it's his greatest flaw. Unleashing his full power, Laro strikes the target with a massive nova fireball, resulting in a colossal explosion of flames. Laro stares ahead with a troubled expression, standing alone amid the aftermath of the battle. His companion reminds him that while power's a necessity, accepting the flaws in others matters just as much, because nobody exists without a weakness. This sentiment triggers a memory of the father Laro once idolized, an invincible, perfect figure who seemed to excel at everything. Seeing his father show vulnerability through tears made Laro realize he has to defeat the Demon King and become the strongest warrior before he can finally have a sincere heart-to-heart talk with him. 3 months into their journey and just 1 week after Laro joined up with the group, they finally reach Brutus, the city of craftsmen. Brutus works as a hub where all the trade guilds, blacksmiths, architects, you name it, work together to keep the whole place thriving. The leader of the group says he wants to use the local talent here to upgrade his weapon and get his whole team kitted out with top-notch gear, head to toe. They head into the blacksmith's guild and the guild master offers up his best workers, but the client turns him down. He already has someone specific in mind. He points straight at a young guy named Toma Bordeaux, who's busy hauling supplies, leaving the guild master totally confused. The master explains that Toma's still just an apprentice, and guild rules say only certified masters can take commissions, but the man doesn't budge. His teammates try to get Albus to respect the rules, but he brushes them off. He wants the fastest, most capable craftsman, period. Albus insists Toma's the only one who can get him what he needs, and he's ready to offer a workaround for the guild's objection. His idea? Have Toma take the master certification exam right now. Once he's got the title, there's no more issue with the commission. The suggestion leaves Toma and the other smiths completely stunned. Toma frantically insists he's nowhere close to master level. Later on, Toma admits he's been with the guild for 10 years since he was a kid. That's enough for Albus to decide skill should matter more than his official rank. The exam itself is simple on paper. Build a masterpiece in 3 days that wins over a panel of expert judges. Albus offers to help Toma sharpen his vision, claiming he's got a background in creative direction, and pushes him to share what he really wants to make. He tells Toma to pour 10 years of pent-up creativity into this one piece. That's when Toma pulls out a worn notebook packed with designs he's kept hidden. The group flips through the notebook and goes silent. The ideas in there are way more advanced and detailed than anyone expected. 3 days later, the guild and the group gather for the formal review. The judges are waiting for Toma to reveal what he's made. Toma draws a blade with a striking wavy pattern running through the steel, and it pulls gasps of awe out of the veteran blacksmiths watching. The judges recognize it as a Dardalk's blade and rave about the craftsmanship. Albus notes the good reaction and moves things along to the next stage. Loro steps in next to present the second part of the commission, showing up fully decked out in a brand new set of heavy plate armor. At first, the judges say the armor looks pretty standard, until it starts clanking and shifting through a whole sequence of mechanical movements. Everyone watching is stunned as the heavy armor actually changes shape, way beyond anything they expected from something this mechanically complex. The judges are blown away by the aerodynamic design and how smoothly the joints move, and they officially declare that Toma Bordeaux has passed the master certification exam. Albus flashes back to another timeline where he first met Toma 3 years down the road, already a legendary traveling blacksmith respected even by dwarves from the magic continent. In that other life, Toma admitted that his long years at the guild had worn down his confidence, keeping him from ever testing his real potential or stepping away from what felt safe. As a kid, he'd spent his apprenticeship watching senior smiths work tirelessly, picking up the craft just by observing and holding a deep respect for what they did. Their skill made Toma feel so small that he eventually gave up on the idea of ever reaching their level or standing as their equal. Seeing Toma succeed now, Albus realizes that in any timeline, the only thing really holding him back was an unnecessary fear of how capable he actually was. When the others ask Albus if he knew about Toma's hidden talent all along, he just says he reminded the smith of his own potential before things got started. He believes real passion for creating something will always beat out intimidation, as long as the craftsman stays true to what's driving him from the heart. Looking at the confident young man in front of him, Albus figures the transformation is complete. Toma's finally stepped into his role as a true master. After getting certified, Toma puts his skills to work on Albus's weapon, making it noticeably stronger and more effective even though it looks exactly the same on the outside. As the group wraps up their business, the other blacksmiths in the guild call out, asking Toma to come join them for a moment. His old crew celebrates his win with real joy, though they can't help teasing him for hiding skills like that for so many years. Loro starts wondering how Albus seems to know so much about what's coming, which makes the leader realize he still hasn't told the group about his time looping. Later, walking through a busy market, the group's companion gets excited when she spots a local specialty called barren carrots. She points out several vegetables that are rare back where she's from, shocked to see them being sold way out here. After hearing the merchant got the rare goods from a traveler, she happily takes charge of the kitchen and decides to make a traditional boko hotpot for dinner. While she talks up how nutritious and warming the meal is, Albus and Loro share a worried look about this dish they've never heard of. Albus lets out a heavy sigh as an uneasy memory from an earlier loop comes back to him, leaving Loro puzzled by his sudden change in expression. Knowing what Albus knows about past timelines, Loro realizes the worry is justified once the hotpot turns out looking like some kind of grotesque, terrifying mess. As their companion rushes off to grab more ingredients, the leader quietly hopes it'll turn out okay, even though he's got his doubts. As she gets to work, she shares that this dish was a staple back at the monastery where she grew up, a taste tied deeply to her past. She starts blanching the fruit, which turns into a dark, bubbling mixture, and it makes her companion ask exactly what she thinks she's doing. To everyone's surprise, the leader jumps in to help, which gets the other guy to quit complaining and pitch in too, focusing on making the cooking go faster. The team works together peeling ingredients while she carefully tends the fire to keep the pot at just the right temperature. She keeps going, adding the final seasonings and stirring everything together as steam starts rising rising from the pot. The traditional boko hot pot from the northern continent is finally ready, chopped vegetables floating in a rich broth. The leader takes the first bite with a lot of hesitation, but his face immediately shifts to shock. The flavor's actually really good. He praises the perfectly salted broth and the texture of the vegetables, and it's clear her effort paid off. Despite all the praise, the girl stays quiet and thoughtful while the group finishes eating together under the night sky. Later that night, while everyone else is asleep, Albus notices Fiona sitting by herself and asks what's bothering her. Fiona admits the hot pot didn't taste quite like she remembered, and the fear that she's forgotten the recipe is keeping her up. Albus tries to reassure her, pointing out that memory isn't always reliable and that the meal was still great no matter what. She stays sad at the thought that a precious piece of her past might be slipping away, and she can't quite shake the feeling. Albus drifts into a heavy memory from a past timeline where he apologized to a mentor for failing to protect Fiona. In that memory, the mentor took back her staff with a heavy heart, acknowledging that the girl had done her duty all the way to the end. He remembers sitting in a cold room after the Demon King's defeat when another nun offered him that same boko hot pot to warm him up. Eating it back then, he remembered how Fiona was never quite satisfied with how her own version of the dish came out during their journey. When the nun asked what he thought of the taste, he realized Fiona's version actually matched the traditional monastery recipe exactly. He figures out that Fiona's memory was never actually wrong. It's just that childhood nostalgia had made the original taste seem better than it really was. The mentor quietly hopes the girl was left with good memories as Albus watches the nun leave the room, pulled back into the heavy reality of the present. Turning to the old man, Albus says he's got one more question for the day about the girl and her brother, while snow keeps falling outside the windows. Back on their journey, Albus reassures Fiona that they'll beat the Demon King and get home, so they can finally enjoy the real taste of that hut pot together. He makes her a firm promise to bring her back safe, and she smiles, vowing to treat him to a meal once they finally reach her hometown. 4 months after they set out, a cheerful young man named Zuluk introduces himself as a traveling merchant. Punna introduces herself right back, all while being tied to a log and dragged along the ground, explaining she got caught fetching water for camp. Turns out she and the merchant are both trapped together in a wooden cage, being hauled through the woods by a massive ogre. The merchant explains these creatures are smart hunters who set traps because they like to keep their prey fresh and alive before butchering it. Despite the danger, he tells her not to worry, pulling out a bottle of magic seeds from the magic continent that'll grow the moment they hit the ground. A sudden jerk from the ogre knocks the bottle right out of his hands and outside the cage, leaving them in trouble just as Albus watches it all unfold from a nearby tree. An arrow suddenly hits the ogre right in the eye and it roars in pain, clutching its face while the captives watch in total shock. Albus steps out with his bow in hand, remarking that the creature was smart to run off so fast, which pulls a relieved shout from the girl in the cage. The merchant's stunned to see the hero standing right there, and Albus just glances back, quietly acknowledging their unexpected reunion. Resting by the campfire, the merchant can't believe he's meeting the legendary hero out here, which gets the girl asking if the two of them already know each other. Albus confirms it, explaining the man is a traveling merchant who deals in medicinal herbs and various magical materials. He notes the guy's kind of an elusive figure who pops up in the strangest places, and despite his stalkerish habit of tailing the group, he's actually pretty useful. The merchant says it's a huge honor to meet him again, and admits he started his journey with the specific goal of being useful to the hero someday. He mentions he prepared something special for Albus, but suddenly loses his strength and collapses, leaving the girl asking what's wrong. He reveals bandits jumped him while he slept and took nearly everything he had before he got captured, which gets Albus offering to go get his stuff back. The merchant's moved by the offer, but the rest of the group gets instantly suspicious of the hero's real motives when they catch a calculating smirk on his face. Albus identifies the attackers as the Red Tail Bandits and points out their hideout sits in the western caves. The merchant's amazed at how fast the hero figured all that out, and Albus warns the group's ruthless, though he plans to clear them out soon enough. Asked about his dream, the merchant talks about his deep love for stories and how human history and heroic tales stir something in him. He says it's a genuine one wonder to watch Albus's legend being written in real time, exactly the kind of story he always hoped to witness. The conversation cuts off short when the ogre from earlier comes back for revenge, looming over the group and catching everyone off guard. Without missing a beat, the merchant flicks a magic seed toward the ground, explaining it'll grow the moment it's planted. The seed erupts almost instantly into a massive, twisting plant that towers over the whole area in seconds. The overgrown vine slams into the monster with a crushing blow, sending blood and debris flying. The giant plant wraps the creature up completely while the rest of the group just watches this sudden display of power in total silence. The merchant sighs in relief, glad he still had a few seeds left in his pocket to avoid disaster, while the others are still shaken by how close that call was. While the group wonders if the merchant's actually powerful, Albus admits he had no idea about that ability before the man tries to pick his speech back up. Standing in front of his massive creation, the merchant proudly declares his ultimate dream is to become part of the hero's legend. He asks for continued patronage with a smile, but the rest of the group demands he do something about the plant, which is still thrashing around wildly. Once the chaos settles, Albus notes the merchant always shows up right on time, and the man claims he simply figured they'd need his help. The merchant tries selling discounted antidotes for the poisonous monsters nearby, but Albus is too focused on his map, realizing their current route won't work. Impressed by how hard the hero's been fighting the odds, the merchant asks if Albus has ever thought about giving up on his journey. He wonders if the hero ever feels empty or worn down inside, and Albus just replies he's long since forgotten what emotions like that even feel like. Back in the present, the group crouches behind the brush, watching the entrance to the Red Tail Bandits' cave hideout. Albus plans to get back the stolen goods and grab a rare material called a power gem, which gets the girl questioning his real motives before he stops the swordsman from charging in. He carefully counts the perimeter and confirms there are only 4 guards posted at the cave entrance right now. Albus tells everyone to follow his lead as they start throwing on cloaks to disguise themselves for the infiltration. He makes it clear their goal is to sneak in and grab the materials without any unnecessary fighting, which catches the swordsman off guard. Explaining the risk of facing 20 bandits at once, Albus points out their sloppy security makes a quiet approach the smarter move. The swordsman stays skeptical, arguing the bandit gang will just keep causing trouble for the region if they don't deal with them now. Albus brushes off the idea, saying it's not his job and the local guards will handle it eventually, since he'd rather keep their journey moving efficiently. The merchant finds the calculated approach interesting, while the swordsman can only sigh in frustration as Albus stays locked on the entrance. Disguised, the group approaches the cave and convinces a confused guard they're just passing through, before Albus tells Punna to come inside with him. Moving deeper into the hideout, the pair spots a single guard stationed right in front of the storage room, who immediately questions who they are. Punna quickly takes him out with her sleep magic, and Albus praises her skill as he gets ready to secure the stolen loot. The quiet retrieval plan falls apart when a massive spiked flail swings through the air, forcing Albus to defend himself from the sudden strike. As Punna calls out in concern, chains rattle in the shadows just before a mocking voice steps out to greet them. The leader of the Red Tail Bandits, Zumzik, introduces himself with a predatory grin, thrilled that the hero actually showed up. With more bandits closing in, Zumzik announces he's here to take Albus's life and claim the title of hero for himself, and the group realizes they've walked into an ambush. In the middle of it all, the merchant's earlier warning about Albus losing his emotions echoes, while the hero's expression stays completely unchanged. The merchant's words point back to how his own repetitive life changed after meeting Albus, and he's genuinely grateful for the new outlook the hero gave him. He encourages Albus to find some excitement in his heart to make sure their journey stays a story worth telling. Back in the fight, Albus ignores the leader's taunts, gripping his sword firmly while narrowing his eyes at his opponent. Zumzik hesitates for a second, sensing something shift in the air just as the hero gets ready to launch a counterattack. With a single powerful gust of wind, Albus strikes forward in a blindingly fast sword move that cuts straight through the bandit leader's defense. The bandits watch in horror as Zumzik takes a serious hit, and the rest of the group braces for the chaos about to break loose. The companion shouts for Zuluk to jump jump in, leaving the girl confused, wondering if he's actually talking to her. The merchant declares he's not holding back, using a magic seed to summon massive flowering vines that erupt from the ground to tangle up the bandits. While the bandits scream in terror at the strange magic, Albus and the girl watch it play out before the swordsman eagerly jumps into the fight. The cavern turns into total chaos as giant vines toss bandits through the air while the girl and swordsman take down the rest. Albus takes it all in, nodding this particular timeline's turned out a lot noisier than any of the loops he's lived through before. The merchant tells the hero to live a little and enjoy the moment, which gets Albus quietly considering the idea of chasing some real excitement. Standing at the entrance with a rare smile, Albus finally admits to himself that this unpredictable turn of events is actually kind of a thrill. A mysterious voice recalls the day the world changed, remembering a split sky and a massive surge of magic that stayed vivid in memory ever since. During a brutal monster raid on a human village, a young Albus is left trembling on the ground next to a fallen woman as creatures close in. The boy weeps in absolute despair as a large, dark hand reaches out toward him in the middle of the burning ruins. A demon king army general named Uzalup shows up and asks why her subordinate is hesitating to kill the children. She wonders out loud whether the boy might grow up fueled by revenge, eventually coming back to challenge the demon army. The shadowy figure decides that crushing a vengeful hero down the road would be way more exciting, but Uzalup quickly changes the subject. Uzalup demands to know how the figure's still alive, reminding him he was supposed to have been killed by the hero. Looking at the destruction around him, the figure realizes time's been rewound, and he's already seen this village burn once before. He admits he originally had no real sense of time, and saw the mission to wipe out humans as just a boring chore for the Demon King. Despite the monotony, he carried out his tasks carefully as time kept looping over and over, until he started to feel something shift in the world. Eventually, he ditched his duties to investigate the magic disturbances on his own, and noticed the Demon King's castle seemed to be the source. His investigation finally leads him to where the disturbance started, and there he finds the hero and the girl standing inside a pillar of light. Once he identifies the man as Albus the hero, the observer decides to stay hidden and watch his every move closely. The hero's journey repeats countless times, with Albus losing to the Demon King before eventually pulling off a win, but the loop never really ends. Watching from the shadows, the mysterious observer admits he's genuinely fascinated by the hero, and he wants to understand him better. To satisfy that pull of curiosity, the figure realizes he needs to drop his disguise and get a lot closer to his target. In an earlier memory, a subordinate hurries through a huge library to deliver a report to a high-ranking official named Zuluk. Revealed as a general in the Demon King's army, Zuluk sees the human library as a treasure trove for understanding human emotion through their stories. He figures that grasping the stories behind his prey's desperate expressions would turn hunting humans into a far more interesting experience. Standing near the aftermath of a raid, Zuluk hopes these tedious duties might finally get more enjoyable, though something still feels missing. Back in the present, the merchant tagging along with the group reveals he's spent a long time hunting for what he calls the ultimate story. Looking at Albus, he decides just watching from the sidelines isn't enough anymore and quietly starts preparing to step into the hero's path. He chooses to actively get involved in the journey, either helping out or stirring up unexpected twists, and drops a magical seed to set his next move in motion. As the magical vines sprout and chaos breaks out, he reflects on how stirring up the hero's emotions might make the whole story more compelling. The merchant considers a cruel possibility, wondering how Albus would react if one of his precious companions suddenly died. Sensing a shift in the air, the girl turns around just as massive magical vines surge up right behind her. The swordsman reacts instantly, leaping forward to slash through the vines before they can reach her. The merchant suddenly caught off guard, feeling a cold presence and a sharp blade closing in on him from behind. Moving with incredible speed, Albus holds a knife to the merchant's throat, calling him out directly as Zuluk and questioning his demon identity. Zuluk smiles at being found out, while Albus admits he was a convincing merchant despite a few slip-ups, and warns him not to push his luck. Instead of striking him down, Albus offers the demon a chance to officially join the party, saying half measures won't be tolerated anymore. While the rest of the group watches in total shock, Albus adds a chilling condition: the offer only stands as long as the demon stays useful. This alliance is a desperate shift from an earlier timeline, where Albus beat the Demon King only for the enemy to come back using the cleric Vpuna as a new vessel. Albus uses magic to rewind the world and start his journey over, driven by one goal: reaching a future where Vpuna doesn't have to die. Watching this cycle repeat, the observer finds the whole thing ridiculous but fascinating, nodding he somehow keeps his own memories even as the world loops. He laughs at the realization that he's special, holding an ability even the Demon King doesn't have. Back in the present, the group reacts with disbelief to Zuluk's true identity, and Albus warns them to stay sharp since the demon's behavior's gotten increasingly unpredictable. Asked how he spotted the demon, Albus explains that despite the disguise, his years of combat experience let him catch traits they just can't hide. He lists off specific giveaways like slow breathing, a lower heart rate, and odd reactions to bird sounds, which gets his companion remarking on how scholarly he sounds. Albus recalls a moment where he probed for answers earlier, and Zuluk had claimed to be from a big western commercial city called Ulnaz. At the time, Albus played along, calling it a nice city, which earned him praise from the demon for seeming so knowledgeable. Truth is, Ulnaz had been destroyed 1,000 years ago, proving the demon's knowledge was outdated, pulled straight from old human stories. Despite walking into that trap, the demon kept up his polite front while Albus watched him with growing suspicion. Back in the confrontation, Albus holds a blade to his throat and confirms the demon really has been holding onto his memories across the loops. Zuluk asks if the offer to join the party still stands, and Albus confirms it does, as long as he stays useful. As Zuluk casually agrees to the arrangement, the swordsman immediately shouts in protest that this is far from okay. Albus argues the demon's presence will speed up their journey, but the swordsman points out the creature just tried to kill Vpuna. Zuluk offers a casual apology, brushing off his assassination attempt as a passing impulse and claiming he actually hates conflict. The conversation gets cut off by a menacing presence looming behind them. A bandit leader swings in with a morning star, screaming that the demon betrayed their deal after they did exactly what he asked. He accuses Zuluk of promising an easy win through an ambush, but the demon just shoots back that men like him could never actually win. Explaining the bandits were just tools for a quick scare, Zuluk coldly tells the leader his job's done and orders him to die. A violent clash breaks out as the bandits get brutally cut down, forcing Albus to step in and deal with the fallout from the demon's scheme. Albus knocks the bandit leader out cold with a swift hit, telling the man to just go to sleep as things wind down. When the demon asks if he's got a problem with killing, Albus clarifies that while the man's crimes deserved death, he personally feels nothing about the act itself. As the remaining bandits scatter, Albus explains he refuses to live by the demon's twisted logic, and he's got no interest in debating blurred moral lines. He looks the creature dead in the eye and declares he won't let things play out according to the demon's wishes anymore. Albus calls him out for manipulating everyone like puppets for his own amusement, getting ready to deliver a final verdict on the demon's schemes. With blunt honesty, Albus tells the demon that the whole script he's written for this journey is just plain boring. The demon's momentarily stunned by that, before his face settles into a chillingly blank smile. Setting clear boundaries, Albus demands the demon follow his instructions strictly if he wants to keep his spot in the party. The demon laughs off the criticism, claiming he only chases what interests him and couldn't care less what others think. Suddenly, massive predatory vines burst from the ground, surrounding the party and forcing them into a defensive stance. As the group braces for this new threat, the demon's polite mask slips, and a dark, sudden impulse creeps into his voice. He admits the whole situation feels strange, because for a second he actually felt a genuine urge to kill Albus. Albus meets the threat with a calm, questioning look, while his companions stay on high alert. The group finds themselves boxed in inside a cave chamber, blocked by several towering, man-eating plants. The girl warns these plants once killed an ogre in a single hit, and the swordsman suggests burning them, until Albus reminds him fire in a closed-off cave would kill them all too. Tension rises as the plants surge forward, and Albus keeps holding the swordsman back from using reckless magic. Watching from above, the demon sighs, feigning disappointment that things couldn't be settled more peacefully. He tells Albus he'll give him some leeway to use his looping abilities, treating their life-or-death fight like just another game to replay. Before the demon can even finish his taunt, Albus fires off an arrow that grazes right past his face. The demon's impressed by the speed of that counterattack, but warns Albus he'll soon struggle to survive the coming storm of vines. Zuluk reveals himself as the power behind the fifth fifth tower, inviting Albus to see the full extent of what he can do. Albus notices glowing butterflies drifting nearby and realizes that if these plants are moving on their own, they've got to be following some kind of sensory trigger. Trying to figure out how the creatures track their prey, Albus works with the girl to test how the plants react to a sudden shift in the environment. She casts a spirit spell called Papillia, summoning a swarm of butterflies to distract the looming vines. The swordsman spots the opening and lines up a powerful strike, a fierce aura building around him as he moves in. He unleashes a feral slash that cuts clean through the massive stalks, shouting for Albus to seize the moment. Albus lunges forward, weapon drawn, going straight for the demon, who's just sitting there, seemingly indifferent to the whole assault. Zelark laughs, asking if Albus really thought getting close meant winning, just as jagged thorns start bursting from the ground. Sharp black vines suddenly pierce right through Albus's shoulders, stopping him cold and drawing blood. Albus gets slammed into the ground by the force of the attack, and the girl screams out in concern as the demon stands over him. Zelark's ecstatic, saying he's been waiting a long time to see Albus make a face like that. He criticizes Albus for having such shallow emotions after looping through the same world over and over, calling a predictable life completely uninteresting. The demon argues that Albus's heart needs stimulation, treating the lack of emotional range like a kind of loss of self. He explains he wants to throw in twists like anxiety and despair, believing those elements are essential for a truly compelling story. Even with thorns still stuck in his flesh, Albus looks up and tells the demon he understands absolutely nothing about him. Zelark's momentarily thrown off by the defiance, but Albus drags himself to his feet, admitting repetition can dull the excitement, but it hasn't broken him. Standing firm despite his serious injuries, Albus makes it clear his emotions haven't been lost at all. He starts walking forward while the party watches in silence, telling Zelark he just hasn't seen the reality of his feelings yet. Albus locks eyes with the demon, intense and wide-eyed, talking about the raw emotion currently boiling somewhere deep inside him. A massive, spiked growth suddenly surges towards Zelark, and the demon loses his cool, screaming for it to stay back. Albus unleashes a powerful gale blast that catches the demon off guard and shoves him back, warning the seated enemy that even as one of the 13 Heavenfall towers, he's still no match for him. Standing firm, Albus rejects the demon's obsession with twists, insisting a straightforward story is way more interesting than a forced one. He gets ready to strike again, declaring the demon's arrogance is about to get cut down. The force of the fight leaves the demon slumped on his knees while Albus keeps his offensive stance. The area around them is a mess from the clash, and the demon's composure starts to crumble. Watching the fight, the swordsman starts to believe Albus really has been looping through time. He notes Albus's strength doesn't come from levels or skills, but from the sheer experience he's built up over countless cycles. The swordsman notices Albus always seems to know exactly where to position himself for the advantage. Meanwhile, the demon struggles to breathe, blood dripping from his mouth, his earlier confidence long gone. The demon's shocked his own move got blocked and reminds them he's a member of the 13 towers. He insists he can't let them keep underestimating his power. In a sudden, jarring shift, the demon throws both hands in the air and declares he's giving up. He tells the stunned group he's got no more desire to fight them. While everyone stares in confusion, the demon offers his services to Albus and promises to stay out of the way. He admits that even though he's technically a general in the Demon King's army, he'd rather not be tied up with them if he can help it. The demon adds that he'll help out but insists on staying neutral in the conflict. Albus just gives him a silent, skeptical stare while weighing the offer. Albus decides to take the deal and shakes the demon's hand, which sets off an immediate outcry from his companions. The swordsman and the girl both yell that Albus is being way too trusting and that the demon can't be relied on. The girl argues demons are cruel and cunning by nature. She reveals her hometown suffered badly from invasions by the Demon King's army, and that's shaped how she sees his kind. She recalls the horrific stories that reached her village: piles of charred remains, surrendered soldiers crucified in the streets. Every piece of news like that made her picture the suffering of her own missing brother. Her expression turns to pure hatred as she thinks back on the pain pain the demon race caused. She demands to know how the demon can be sure he isn't just like the rest of his cruel kind. Addressing her as Fiona, the demon smiles darkly and admits she's right, he is cruel and cunning. He explains matter-of-factly that there's nothing he can do to change his nature, that's just how demons are built. The group watches him warily as he talks about himself with total indifference. Fiona asks if he thinks that excuses his actions, but the demon says he's not looking for forgiveness and won't apologize. He concludes that demons and humans are just too different and they'll never really understand each other. Suddenly, the demon's body gives out and he coughs up a massive amount of blood before collapsing. The swordsman watches, completely stunned by the sudden turn. Looking down at the unconscious demon, the swordsman realizes Albus's earlier attacks did a lot more damage than they seemed to. Albus looks at his fallen enemy and tells the party he's got an idea for their next move. Sometime later, under a clear sky, the demon finally opens his eyes and starts coming to. Fiona notices and alerts the others that he's awake. The demon weakly asks if they've decided what to do with him. Albus glances back over his shoulder and just tells him to come over so they can move forward. Continuing the conversation, Albus brings out a magic tool called the Oath Collar. He explains it uses binding magic to force whoever wears it to strictly follow the terms of an agreement. Albus warns the magic's lethal, it'll take the wearer's head if they try to break the contract. The demon thinks the method's brutal, but Albus insists it's the only way to keep him in check. He reveals there's just one rule the demon has to follow: never tell a lie. The group watches quietly as the demon asks if that's really all he wants. Albus clarifies that while he uses people to reach his goals, he refuses any kind of master and slave setup. The demon acknowledges the stance as he thinks over the offer. Sitting with the group, the demon offers a condition of his own, promising he won't cause harm to any humans anymore. He asks if that's enough to earn their trust. Albus looks him in the eye and tells him he's decided to believe his word. Accepting the deal, the demon breaks into a wide smile and challenges Albus to show him something interesting while they travel together. Albus immediately activates the oath magic and the demon laughs, calling him a strange one. The girl mutters that's rich, coming from a creature like him. As the group keeps traveling by carriage, the swordsman asks where Albus got such a rare item. Albus explains he found a hidden shop back in the last city and refers to the demon by his name, Zelark. The girl turns to Zelark and tells him he shouldn't feel forced to stay with them. She says she can see things from his side of it now. Even though she admits she can't fully trust him yet, she wants to try to understand who he is beyond his demon nature while they travel together. She tells him that for now, she'll call him Zelark-san as a small sign of that effort to understand him. Zelark agrees to the name, but reminds her he only plans to stay a neutral observer of their journey, not a permanent ally. Albus cuts in and tells Zelark he expects him to work incredibly hard. He pulls out a long document saying he stayed up all night writing him a to-do list. He rattles off major tasks like building a bridge and taking down a thunder dragon to expand their reach. Zelark starts tuning him out, commenting instead on how nice the weather's gotten. The story pauses to reflect that mistakes happen to everyone, and no one can really be blamed for them no matter how careful they try to be. As a small figure disappears into the trees, the girl looks around and asks where Albus went. The swordsman tells her Albus is checking the route ahead and mentions they're currently in a dangerous area called Oro's Playground. Zelark explains a prankster which once lived here and her curses still linger, making it risky to stray off the main road. The swordsman hears a rustle in the brush and watches a small white dog suddenly pop out and run straight toward them. As the group comes across the little dog on the path, the girl wonders if it's actually a monster, but the swordsman confirms it's just a dog, while Zelark playfully asks the little guy how he ended up out here. Things turn ugly when the dog suddenly lunges and bites the demon's hand, making him lash out in pain. While the girl warns everyone to be careful with the stray, Zelark notices something odd in the animal's behavior and realizes it's trying to tell them something important. Ignoring the swordsman's warning not to wander off, Zelark follows the dog into the woods and the rest of the party eventually catches up to find a shocking scene. The group finds Albus's clothes lying discarded in the middle of a glowing magic circle, and it clicks that their leader has vanished. Zelark identifies the formation as one of Oro's infamous cursed traps and warns the others to stay back while he checks it out. He explains these traps trigger the instant you step on them and suggests Albus has probably been turned into some other creature by the curse. course. The small dog suddenly confirms exactly that, claiming to be Albus and desperately begging the group for help. Albus explains he knew this path well but got careless and stepped right on the trap, and now he needs the girl's help to reverse the transformation. Things get chaotic fast when several identical dogs show up, all claiming to be the real Albus, begging the party to recognize them. The girl and the swordsman can't believe it, since this dog looks way too adorable compared to Albus's usual stern face, while Zelark's clearly enjoying the confusion. To settle things once and for all, the dog releases a massive aura of intimidation that instantly convinces everyone of who he really is. Zelark claims he's handled situations like this before and offers to redraw the magic circle to reverse the spell, as long as they let him take the lead. The swordsman stays unconvinced and asks Zelark point blank if he was the one who set the trap targeting Albus in the first place. Zelark defends himself by pointing to his oath never to lie, but as the swordsman keeps pushing, Albus admits the mistake was entirely his own and asks them to hurry. Before anyone can react, a massive pair of talons drops out of the sky and snatches the transformed Albus right off the ground. The group can only watch as a giant rockbird carries Albus high above the forest, far from the safety of the path. Dangling from the bird's claws, Albus braces for the worst, thinking he probably should have reconsidered bringing a demon into the group. He worries his special abilities might not even work in his current form, while Zelark uses magic to summon a massive vine to chase after the bird. Seeing the magic vine as his only shot, the swordsman sprints up it with a determined shout, ready to rescue his leader from the sky. Zelark watches with a satisfied smile as the swordsman leaps off the tip of the giant vine straight toward the flying bird. Pulling off a powerful move called Dead Fall, the swordsman strikes the creature, catches the transformed Albus midair and lands safely back on the magic plant. Once everyone's back on solid ground, Zelark finishes the reversal spell as the others watch the magic circle glow with intense light. A young man finally emerges from the middle of the formation, clearly relieved to have made it through that whole ordeal alive. While the girl covers her eyes in shock, Albus complains the rescue could have been gentler, but the swordsman reminds him the whole mess was his own fault to begin with. Albus gives credit to the team effort, while Zelark admits he wants to stick around this world a bit longer since he hasn't had his fair share of fun yet. Albus warns the demon not to get any weird ideas, while the girl jokes she wouldn't have minded if their leader had stayed in his cute dog form a little longer. High above the forest, a mysterious woman on a broomstick watches the group, wondering why they're trespassing in her teacher's yard. Later that night at camp, Albus asks Zelark directly how he's able to hold onto his memories across the different loops. Zelark jokes at first about being chosen by God, but eventually admits he's just special, and honestly doesn't understand the mechanism behind it himself. Albus notices that Lauro also seems to have fragments of past memories, and starts to feel like the world's slowly beginning to change. When Zelark asks what he'd do if his old party members started remembering the past too, Albus figures he'll deal with that whenever it actually happens. The group continues on the next morning but stops in their tracks when they spot a strange creature sitting in the middle of the path. They identify it as a golden star, a rare mouse with golden fur that's incredibly valuable since it's so rarely seen by humans. They realize the fur alone could be worth 100,000 coins, easily enough to make the rest of their journey a whole lot easier. They count on Zelark to catch it, but the mouse is way too fast, dodging every vine he sends out to trap it. The woman from the sky suddenly swoops down, offering to catch the mouse herself, and Albus recognizes her as a legendary prodigy from the Royal Magic Academy. Her name's Gina Graces, a brilliant mage who passed the entrance exam at age 11 and graduated at the top of her class. Albus recalls she was once a key ally who helped bring down the Demon King, right as she gets ready to show off her crystal magic. With a single incantation, casting her spell Crystalia, Gina instantly seals the golden mouse in a solid block of crystal, and the group watches in awe. The mage scoops up the crystallized mouse, nodding that luck's on her side today, while the others just stare at the captured creature. Zelark demands she do something about their legs being stuck in the crystal, but she explains the magic will fade on its own eventually, and offers to remove it right now for a price. She asks for 1,000 coins per person to free them, which sends the demon into immediate frustration over the steep cost. As the group travels together by wagon, she asks Albus if he's really the hero, and and admits joining the quest to defeat the Demon King once seemed like a smart move for her. She reveals she answered the call for the prestige and the generous reward, only to get brushed off and left stranded in the castle town. While the demon mutters about her obsession with money, the mage asks who's going to pay her back for the time and travel expenses she wasted getting to the capital. She sharply fires back that researching magic is an expensive business, and it takes serious funding to keep going. She lists off the high costs of specialized tools and rare materials, plus the expense of running a workshop, while the girl sighs at how tough the world can be. The girl asks why she doesn't get financial support as a famous academy prodigy, but the mage just asks if they'd even heard of her reputation before this. When the girl praises her for traveling the world to help people, the mage brushes it off, saying she was only doing it for the rewards. She explains she was expelled 3 years ago for practicing what the academy calls heretical magic, and she's no longer eligible for any official support. Even without institutional backing, she stays determined to keep exploring the specific branch of magic she's into, no matter the cost. Albus looks at her seriously and asks if she'd still be willing to join their party for the Demon King subjugation, if he asked. The rest of the group's shocked by the sudden invitation, while Albus quietly wonders if others out there might also be holding onto fragments of past memories. The mage quickly turns him down, showing zero interest in going back to life as an adventurer or saving the world. She tells them she's lost interest and is leaving world peace in their hands, right as they reach a fork in the road where they have to part ways. The girl says it was an honor to meet her and hopes they'll cross paths again, but the mage only gives a cold, brief nod back. Just as the woman starts to walk off, Albus calls out her name for one last warning. He asks if her home's nearby and suggests it'd be a really good idea for her to beef up her workshop's magical defenses. The mage thinks the advice is strange, until Albus reveals he knows the future, telling her plainly that her workshop's about to be attacked and burned down. The story of Gina Graces, the genius sorcerer of the Royal Magic Academy, actually traces back to a deep sorrow from her early childhood. In a memory from her past, a young Gina sits alone in the woods, approached by a mysterious woman who asks what a little girl's doing out there. Gina notices the woman's distant look and explains she's been waiting there for 3 days since her father told her to stay put. When the girl asks if the woman's come to collect her, the stranger realizes the kid was abandoned to cut down on mouths to feed, and Gina quietly confirms it's true. Seeing this meeting as a twist of fate, the woman introduces herself as the witch Oro and invites the girl to leave her past behind and come with her. At the Royal Magic Academy, senior sorcerer Enrique Winford looks back on the genius student they expelled 3 years earlier. He notes Gina was the witch Oro's disciple and claims her original enrollment was a background check mistake, leaving them no choice but to cast her out once her origins came to light. Headmaster Ulzane Drock brings up old rumors that Oro was researching dimensional magic capable of bending both time and space. Enrique's unsettled by the mention of such a forbidden art, but Ulzane explains Oro died before those rumors could ever be confirmed. The sorcerer asks if Gina might be the one carrying on that heretical research now, which gets the headmaster asking if he'd like to check. Enrique insists heresy can't be tolerated and forbidden research carries serious consequences, prompting Ulzane to tell him to simply take it from her if they find proof. As the headmaster claims all groundbreaking research rightfully belongs to the academy, the scene cuts back to the group traveling away in their wagon. The girl voices her worry for Gina, but Albus stays focused, stressing they need to move fast if they're going to protect her from the coming attack. He predicts the attack will happen on the night of the new moon, 2 months out, which leaves the demon marveling at how he could possibly know that much. Albus recalls a past loop where a message reached Gina from a fellow sorcerer, warning that the Magic Academy had already burned her workshop to the ground. In that earlier timeline, Gina was devastated to read that her research was destroyed, but stayed silent when Albus asked if she planned to go back. She'd stubbornly ruled out returning and insisted on finishing their mission no matter what had been lost. Back in the present, Albus trusts Gina's strength to handle things while acknowledging his own groups got their own tasks to get through. As the wagon rolls on, Gina watches them go from a distance, remarking on what a bunch of oddballs they are. Back at her tower, she stands alone, bracing herself for the reality that the Academy's forces are finally coming for her. The story goes back to a memory of Oro welcoming Gina to her new home, where the young girl immediately notices how filthy and cluttered the tower is inside. Oro quickly hands the girl a long list of chores, cleaning, cooking, feeding her familiars, but Gina takes it all on without complaint, just grateful to have a roof over her head. As Gina promises to do whatever work it takes to stay, Oro praises her for being a good girl. Years later, a teenage Gina asks why she's being forced to leave home and head all the way to the academy. Oro coldly tells her she's become a hindrance to her personal goals, ignoring the girl's tearful pleas to stay on as her apprentice forever. Back in the present, 2 months after Albus's warning, a group of masked purge executors from the Magic Academy shows up at the tower on the night of the new moon. Their leader confirms the orders: neutralize Gina Grace's, retrieve her research, and burn the whole place down as fast as possible. One of the sorcerers pulses a detection spell into the ground with his staff, scanning for any hidden magical traps. After picking up no reaction, the group figures the path's clear and moves forward, wondering out loud how there could be no defenses at all. Their overconfidence walks them straight into a massive pitfall, where they're suddenly ambushed and impaled by a barrage of physical spikes. As the executors realize the traps were purely physical, built to exploit their reliance on magic detection, Gina watches from above, noting how easy it is to trick sorcerers who only think in terms of magic. Hovering on her broom, Gina reflects on how right Albus was about the attack and remembers the day Oro claimed she was just a hindrance. Looking down at the invaders, she finally realizes Oro's harsh words were a lie, meant to push her away and shield her from the Academy's reach. Gina realizes that despite the loneliness she felt, Oro chose to cast her out so she could keep pursuing her forbidden research in secret. Driven to understand what her teacher was really after, Gina resolves to defend the tower so she can one day speak with Oro again. In another childhood memory, Oro sits with Gina in the woods to start her formal training in the techniques of exceptional sorcerers. Oro starts by laying out the concept of elemental magic set up by the Academy, even though she clearly finds the whole system annoying. She explains how magic splits into 4 primary elements and 3 sub-elements, a system that spread worldwide and let the Academy label anyone they wanted as a heretic. Gina recites from her books that people are born with innate attributes that decide their specialty, and using magic outside that attribute cuts their power in half. When Gina identifies her own attribute as Earth, Oro dismisses the whole system as boring and gets ready to teach her something far more important. The girl stares down at the survivors of her trap while they mock her for thinking she can take on this many opponents alone. The group introduces themselves as the Purge Executors, the elite force of the Magic Academy. The girl fires back with a crystal spell called Crystalia, which the masked men recognize as part of the Earth attribute. Confident in their training, the executors talk through the elemental cycle and prepare to exploit Earth's weakness to wind. One of the mages unleashes a tempest spell to tear through her defenses, but the wind can't get past her shield. The girl reveals a fiery crystal named Ruby, proving the wind magic had no effect on her defense at all. The executors realize her crystal magic somehow carries a fire attribute and decide to torch the workshop to force her surrender. She instantly counters their flames with a water-based crystal called Aquamarine, drenching the attackers in a flash. The group is stunned that a mage with an earth attribute can wield water, calling it flat-out impossible. Hovering above them, the girl dismisses their logic, saying common sense just doesn't apply to her. She explains her gemstone magic, a technique that infuses different attributes into crystals so she can wield any element with real precision. A sudden magical strike hits her square in the chest, knocking her off balance and sending her falling from her broom. A hidden executor mocks her for being naive, underestimating the Academy by assuming they'd all just be gathered in one spot. As she crashes to the ground, the long-haired leader tells her she's been hit with paralysis magic and she can't lift a finger now. He lays out their doctrine of methodical cunning before demanding she hand over all her research on forbidden magic. The girl plays dumb, but the mages insist the Academy has to suppress forbidden magic to keep the world in order. She asks if they actually believe their own words, codes, and the leader coldly decides to destroy anything they find suspicious. The executors stand over her and declare that both her life and the workshop are going up in ashes. A magic circle suddenly erupts around her, catching the executors off guard as they realize she'd set up a self-activating spell in advance. The girl triggers her final defense, Diamond, sealing herself inside an indestructible crystalline structure. The light attribute barrier doesn't just block the executors' attacks, it starts healing her injuries too, leaving the masked men in total shock. She remembers Oro's wisdom, the lesson to always question common sense and find joy in searching for new truths. Vowing to shatter their narrow logic, the girl flashes a defiant grin, and the lead executor finally admits she's a worthy, prodigious opponent. The intense standoff gets suddenly interrupted by a girl arriving on a Pegasus, screaming for everyone to stop fighting right now. The executors are stunned by the rare sight of the winged steed, while the girl realizes the rider's a companion of the hero, Albus. Holding up a sealed scroll, the newcomer announces she's arrived under the direct orders of Headmaster Drock from the Magic Academy. She reads out the official order for the executors to stand down, explaining the academy will no longer interfere with Gina or her research. The scene shifts back to the Magic Academy, revealing Albus had traveled there specifically to negotiate directly with the headmaster. In their private meeting, Albus firmly asks the academy to stay out of any further business with the heretic witch. This intervention cements a bond between Gina and Fiona, one that had actually formed long before the hero started this current loop through time. Ulzane Drock, the headmaster of the Royal Magic Academy, greets his guest, admitting he wishes he'd gotten some warning about the hero's arrival. Seated in the round table room, Albus skeptically asks if the cookies he's been offered have any hidden magic laced in them. After enjoying the snacks, Albus listens as the headmaster compares the deep craft of baking to the complexities of mastering magic. The old man explains that keeping perfect balance matters in everything, since a single error in timing or heat can ruin the whole thing. The mood turns cold as the headmaster states plainly that he believes Gina Graces is a threat that needs to be eliminated. He argues her forbidden research puts the world's balance at risk and questions why the hero's so set on protecting her. Albus brushes off their connection as just chance, but insists Gina's a crucial asset they'll need to eventually defeat the Demon King. Doubting her worth, the headmaster offers to introduce Albus to the era's most skilled ice sorcerers instead, as a better option. Albus doesn't budge, insisting that even if you searched every corner of the academy, you'd never find a sorcerer greater than Gina. When Albus asks if the headmaster secretly recognizes her talent too, the old man smiles, nodding the hero seems remarkably well informed about the girl. Looking back on her past, the witch describes just how grueling her journey was, recalling the devastating moment she returned home to find it completely destroyed. She revisits memories of their time together, quiet moments of study, shared meals, and the heat of battle, nodding their shared victory over the Demon King got overshadowed by tragedy. Standing before a grave with the hero, she somberly admits to losing her companion, Fiona, whose name still weighs heavy on her heart. At her workshop, she reads the Academy's official decree stating they'll stop interfering in her life, though the document comes with a major condition attached. The scroll demands she join the hero's quest to slay the Demon King, a revelation that leaves her shouting in protest and disbelief. The writer argues that accepting the terms is the only way to keep the executors from coming back, but the witch stays suspicious, wondering why the hero's so obsessed with recruiting her. While she grumbles that her magic's just too attractive for her own good, the hero tells the writer that despite the negotiations, the final call on joining the party has to belong to the witch herself. The hero asks the writer to go talk with the witch and confirm her decision, but he doesn't give her any specific script to follow. He simply tells her to have a sincere conversation, which leaves the writer a little puzzled by his casual, hands-off approach to something this important. Sitting outside the workshop, the writer brings up the witch's research goals, and the witch admits she's continuing her master's work on what the world calls forbidden magic. She smiles while admitting she hopes her research might lead to a reunion with her late master, Oro, even though the writer points out the famous sorcerer's been dead a long time. Recognizing how absurd it sounds to try reviving the dead, she confesses her whole pursuit might be entirely pointless, and she doesn't expect anyone to understand or believe believe in it. To her surprise, the writer answers with total certainty, saying the witch will absolutely see her master again. The writer shares that she's also got someone she wants to see again, and even though the odds say he's probably gone, she holds firm to the belief they'll cross paths eventually. Laughing at how similar their seemingly impossible goals are, the writer notes they're actually pretty alike in how determined they are. Back in the present conversation with the hero, the witch admits that even though her past journey was brutal, she treasures the time she spent with the writer, someone she remembers as a truly good person. Overwhelmed by the memory of her lost friend, the witch breaks down in tears, crying out that she desperately wants to see her companion again. Back at the negotiation table, the hero tells the headmaster he trusts the witch because he believes they're both ultimately headed toward the exact same goal. After the hero leaves, the headmaster's subordinate is shocked at his boss's uncharacteristic leniency, but the old man just sees it as a way to put the hero in his debt. Admitting he's impressed by the hero's resolve, the headmaster decides that once the Demon King's defeated, he'll lift the witch's expulsion so the academy can claim its share of the glory. Inside a tower, a young girl walks into a room calling for Gina, only to find the workshop completely empty. Looking back on an earlier conversation, the witch tells Oro she's planning to leave for a while and join the others on their journey. The witch explains her master's currently bound by dimensional magic, a spell that exists outside the normal flow of time. She promises that once she finds a way to break the stasis keeping her master from aging or decaying, they'll finally be able to talk to each other again. The story shifts back over a century to a grand departure ceremony that would eventually shape the hero's long journey. During the very first loop of Hero Albus's quest to defeat the Demon King, the royal capital throws a massive celebration to send the party off. As the king watches and the citizens cheer their champions on, a mysterious voice suddenly calls out to Albus from the crowd. A hooded figure steps up to the hero, claiming it's been 10 years since their last meeting. Albus recognizes him as God's messenger, who asks for a private word, and the crowd around them seems to just vanish. While giving the hero credit for his extensive training, the messenger bluntly says Albus is still nowhere near strong enough to defeat the Demon King. He explains the enemy's power is so overwhelming that the hero will need to repeat this entire journey countless times just to build up the strength he needs. To make that growth possible, the messenger offers to grant him the ultimate dimensional magic, one that lets Albus reshape the very fabric of the world. The spell guarantees that when the hero dies, he'll return to the start of his journey, a cycle the messenger warns could stretch on for over 100 years. Taking in the weight and length of what's ahead, Albus gives his immediate consent to take on the repeating quest. The messenger reveals he chose Albus because this path lines up with the future Merida wanted, one where everyone in the world gets to live happily. A massive clock-like magic circle activates around the hero before the scene snaps right back to the cheering crowds at the city gates. His companions notice him zoning out and ask if something's wrong, but Albus just brushes it off as they get ready to head out. Jumping to the present, in the 37th loop, the party's traveling by wagon 6 months into their journey, debating whether to wait up for Fiona. Albus assures them she'll catch up easily, explaining the Pegasus the headmaster lent her is 10 times faster than any regular horse. The group marvels at the legendary speed of the mythical beast as they keep heading toward the next town to link back up with their teammate. Albus explains that while the Pegasus can carry people, it's too delicate to pull carts, something the headmaster would never allow anyway, as the group hopes Fiona's managed to recruit Gina. When a companion asks if all the effort spent on her was really worth it, Albus honestly admits he's still not sure. Despite the uncertainty, Albus decides to trust his companions again, figuring it's harmless to try something new since they can always start over if it fails. His thoughts get interrupted by a voice warning him he no longer has the luxury of being careless. Noticing an uninvited guest, Albus remarks that this mysterious figure always has a knack for showing up out of nowhere. The hooded messenger casually greets the hero, nodding quite a bit of time's passed since their last meeting. Albus wonders just how many centuries have gone by since his original journey started, but the messenger clarifies he's back specifically to deliver a grave warning. The figure bluntly tells Albus it's time to to end his quest and quit the cycle, leaving the hero in total disbelief. The messenger argues that since the main mission, defeating the Demon King, was already completed long ago, these continued loops just to save one girl aren't necessary. He insists Albus has to give up on saving Fiona Umel, revealing that she's actually the vessel for the Demon King. Flashing back to the fifth loop, the story shows the moment Albus first succeeded in striking down the armored Demon King in battle. But after the victory, a blood-stained girl appears among the ruins, greeting Albus like she'd been expecting him all along. Shocked to realize she was the true enemy, Albus watches as she announces the start of round 2 and unleashes a devastating counterattack. Moving into the sixth loop, Albus's companions notice him hesitate when they run into the same girl praying alone in a graveyard during their travels. Remembering her true nature from the last loop, Albus confirms to himself that this girl is indeed the vessel carrying the Demon King. Driven to figure out her connection to the enemy army, Albus decides to walk over and start a conversation with her. When he asks if she's a local cleric, the girl explains she's just a traveler, offering prayers for the villagers killed in a monster attack. Determined to uncover the truth behind who she really is, Albus pushes past his internal conflict and asks the girl for her name. Back in the present, the messenger delivers a final ultimatum, warning Albus that continuing to loop will get him cast out of the world's timeline for good. The scene shifts to a peaceful home, where Albus explains to Merida that he sent a crying boy named Van away because he wouldn't stop pestering him for magic lessons. Merida asks if Albus can make an exception for the boy who dreams of becoming his companion someday, but the hero firmly refuses, since the kid just doesn't have the talent for magic. Albus explains he'd only feel bad for the boy if he worked hard and still failed in the end, but the woman reminds him the future's never set in stone. She encourages him to chase even the smallest sliver of hope with everything he's got, arguing that in the end, everyone wants a happy ending. Looking out at the horizon, the woman asks if a perfect future like that doesn't sound like a goal worth chasing. The story shifts to an ancient legend of an evil force known as the Demon King, who once ruled the world before being struck down by a lone man who appeared out of nowhere. Even though peace seemed restored, the Demon King's soul refused to give up, and it kept searching for a way back. Back in the present, the messenger explains the Demon Kings kept coming back by possessing new vessels across different eras. To fight this cycle, the hooded figure has chosen heroes throughout history, giving them the power to reshape the world so they could loop through time and keep the peace. But the messenger warns that everything has its limits, and points out that the people around Albus have already started remembering their past loops. While a few unique individuals were always immune to the reset, the fact that ordinary people are starting to remember is a sign the grand spell's reaching its breaking point. The figure delivers a grim ultimatum, stating that using the spell any further will get Albus cast out of the world's timeline, leaving the hero wondering what happens after that. The messenger describes a fate where Albus wanders the world like a ghost, unable to interact with anything or anyone, forever denied even the release of death. Albus quietly takes it all in as the messenger insists the only way to end this is to defeat the Demon King currently possessing Fiona. If he succeeds, there'll be no vessels left in this era, and the Demon King will stay dormant for a century, fulfilling the glimpse of the future Albus has already seen. In that vision, the hero stands before a cheering crowd in a world finally freed from the shadow of this ancient enemy. The messenger asks if Fiona's life is really worth more than that peaceful future, but Albus just dismisses her as nothing more than a traveling companion. He looks back on the fifth loop when the girl turned the capital into a sea of blood and compares it to the sixth loop when he first brought her into his party to study her nature. Despite his initial wariness, Albus admits it was almost disappointing to see how terrified she was of even the lowest level monsters when they first met. That encounter marked the start of their journey together as they traveled through new lands and fought side by side against all kinds of threats. They shared every meal and experience as a group, and Albus notes she had potential from the very start and never once slacked on her daily training. The girl eventually earned her place in the party by proving herself in battle, and showed a gentler side around the kids in the villages they passed through. Albus watched her closely as she shared genuine laughter with the locals, noticing the huge gap between this version of her and the monster she was destined to become. Still, the memory of her corrupted form, cursed marks across her face, haunted him as a constant reminder of the tragedies he'd witnessed in earlier timelines. When Albus finally told her the truth, the girl initially laughed it off as a joke, unable to believe she could ever become the Demon King. The mood turned somber by the campfire as Albus asked her to just listen calmly while he explained they'd already fought each other 5 times or more. Realizing the weight of what he'd said, the girl made a desperate request that Albus kill her if she ever lost herself to the darkness again. She gave a sad smile, insisting her life would be a small price to pay if her death could finally bring lasting peace to the world. She revealed the heavy guilt she carried over her brother's disappearance and admitted she deeply wanted to stop being the reason people around her kept dying. Despite the countless times Albus had been defeated and all the times he was tempted to give up, he kept going, driven by memories of her smile and the burden they shared. Back in the present, the messenger urges the hero to accept the girl's death as a noble sacrifice for the world, but Albus rejects that cold logic, calling her again just a traveling companion. He explains that just traveling together is reason enough to want her alive, and firmly declares he won't give up on her. The hooded figure questions whether the hero truly understands the terrifying reality of being completely erased from the world's timeline. As the messenger describes a state of eternal loneliness, never being able to interact with anyone again, Albus notices he's talking like someone who's actually lived through it. Remembering the encouragement to chase even a sliver of hope, the hero resolves to use his strength to build a perfect future. He lays out a plan to defeat the Demon King while keeping all his companions alive and sending the girl back to her hometown to keep the sacrifices to a minimum. Albus adds that he's completely fine with not being part of that future himself, a level of resolve that leaves the messenger momentarily speechless. The hooded figure finally relents, telling Albus to do as he wishes, as the hero gets ready to face what's ahead. In the time that follows, a boy named Van works tirelessly to become a sorcerer's apprentice, a development Albus hopes to eventually share with Merida. Traveling by carriage with his current party, the hero reflects that a future worth striving for is one that no one, not even him, can fully predict. Despite the looming limits on his ability to reset the world, Albus keeps his deepest feelings to himself and stays firmly committed to his impossible goal. The story jumps back to 1 year before Albus's first encounter with God's messenger. An elven scout spots a signal fire through her telescope and immediately tells her companion to report it to the king. She stresses how urgent this is, declaring the Demon King's revived and word needs to reach the human kingdom right away. At a royal council, the king reads a report confirming the brazier in the Demon King's castle has been lit for the first time in 160 years, crushing the noble's hopes. The king points to a legend claiming a hero will rise to slay the Demon King, and decides they'll wait for this figure to show himself. While the nobles worry about the hero's arrival and plan to fortify their cities against worsening monster attacks, the story turns its focus to a young boy, the only one chosen by God to end this threat. Back in the present, 37th loop, 6 months into the journey, Albus's party has split into 2 groups heading toward the trade city of Rondell. Traveling by carriage, Albus and his companion get flagged down by a girl on the side of the road asking for a ride. The girl hops into the back of the cart and thanks them, explaining she's exhausted from walking back after selling her goods. She introduces herself as Miria and mentions her village is close by, which gets Albus's companion warning her the area's dangerous, full of monsters and bandits. Miria laughs off the warning and shows off a knife coated in basilisk venom, claiming she can take down any enemy with a single stab. She notes the group looks strong and asks if they're the hero's party, then immediately walks it back, saying a hero would never ride in a rickety old cart like this. Miria adds she doesn't believe in heroes anyway, a comment that leaves Albus and his companions sitting in heavy silence. She keeps mocking the idea of people handing the world over to someone who isn't even special, but Albus ignores the chatter, insisting they need to hurry. The sound of a struggle draws their attention to a village under attack by monsters, and Albus tells everyone to get ready for battle. The party moves in fast, Albus cutting through monsters with his sword while his companions use magic and shields to protect the villagers. Watching from the carriage, Miria is stunned as it hits her that she's in the presence of the real hero. The village chief thanks Albus for saving everyone, but his own companions start wondering if the hero knew about the attack ahead of time and rushed there on purpose. Albus admits he'd planned to come, since the king's troops only protect the big cities, leaving small settlements like this one exposed during the Demon King's revival. Instead of gratitude, Miria approaches Albus looking devastated, angrily demanding to know why he didn't get there sooner to save them. Miria shouts that her village would have been saved if they'd just arrived sooner, but the village chief steps in and tells Albus she's actually from a neighboring settlement. He explains her original home was wiped out by monsters a year ago, which Albus's companion points out was before the hero had even started his journey. Albus offers a simple apology for her loss, while his companion watches him and can't help but sympathize with just how heavy and difficult a burden it is to be the world's hero. Miria reflects on human history and shares her realization that heroes were originally nothing more than scapegoats for the masses to lean on. She explains that past rulers dumped all the responsibility onto one person to dodge accountability, turning the chosen hero into little more than a sacrifice destined to suffer. While the first hero's victory became a symbol of hope for the world, she notes that for every hero who came after, that same legend turned into nothing but a curse. Back in the carriage, Miria asks Albus why he'd even accept a role like that, which sends him back to a time long ago when someone asked him the exact same question. On a later visit to a graveyard, Miria finds Albus and congratulates him on finally slaying the Demon King, though Albus is surprised to see the woman who once yelled at him. Miria admits she wasn't thinking straight during their first encounter, and explains she spent time looking into his reputation and the rumors going around about him. She mentions people calling him a scammer or a reckless lunatic riding around in a beat-up cart, but eventually she realized he'd been working to save as many villages as he could. After thanking him for everything he'd done and promising never to forget it, she asks Albus what exactly drove him to put in all that effort. Albus reveals he grew up an abandoned child who always felt unwanted, so becoming a source of hope for other people was something that genuinely made him happy. He admits he had to rush through defeating the Demon King as fast as possible to keep casualties down, leaving only one final piece left to complete his goal.